The girl asked the man selling buns to pretend to be her wealthy boyfriend for a class reunion. She didn't expect Lee Duo-hai to get out of a luxury car. Lee Duo-hai lied to Xia Kiki, claiming the car was rented to dispel her suspicions. Xia Kiki instructed Lee Duo-hai to behave properly at the class reunion. She immediately pulled out her lipstick and asked Lee Duo-hai to apply some to his lips. Meanwhile, Xia Kiki's ex-boyfriend and friends also arrived at the hotel. They mocked Xia Kiki, saying she wouldn't show up today. Just as they were talking, a luxury car pulled up in front of them. Lee Duo-hai quickly got out and opened the door for Xia Kiki. Enemies meeting face to face were filled with hatred, and their eyes were filled with disdain. When the gathering began, a classmate asked Xia Kiki what her boyfriend did for a living. Lee Duo-hai quickly and cautiously replied that he had bought several five-star hotels in South Africa. Everyone was envious upon hearing that Lee Duo-hai was involved in international trade. However, what Lee Duo-hai said next left everyone speechless. He mentioned that while private jets were convenient, they were uncomfortable to sit in. He had decided to purchase a cruise ship that could accommodate 3,000 people. Xia Kiki's ex-boyfriend, Guan Hao, perked up upon hearing Lee Duo-hai's plan to buy a cruise ship. He claimed to be well acquainted with Jack, a cruise ship seller. Guan Hao pretended to take out his phone to call the seller. Lee Duo-hai, hearing the lies, immediately called Jack himself. Jack and Lee Duo-hai were actually old friends. He immediately offered to sell Lee Duo-hai the cruise ship for only 1.8 billion yuan. Guan Hao felt humiliated upon hearing this. Lee Duo-hai quickly asked Jack and Guan Hao if they were close friends. Jack claimed that he didn't know Guan Hao and told Lee Duo-hai to be careful because there were many scammers around. Xia Kiki earned a lot of face in front of her classmates. Lu Lan was particularly unhappy about losing face, so she urged her boyfriend to take action. Guan Hao had no choice but to take the initiative to find Lee Duo-hai and drink with him, pretending to get him drunk. Taking advantage of Lee Duo-hai going to the bathroom, Xia Kiki quickly followed him out. She urged Lee Duo-hai to take advantage of the situation and run away. Otherwise, if he got drunk and spilled the truth, everything would be exposed. Lee Duo-hai was a seasoned veteran. Dealing with Guan Hao was child's play for him. He told Xia Kiki that since they dared to come today, they weren't afraid of them, and they never expected them to run away midway. Back at the table, Lee Duo-hai directly brought out 2 large cups. Xia Kiki was touched that Lee Duo-hai would risk his life for her, but she couldn't bear to see him get hurt. In the end, Guan Hao was carried home by his classmates. Lee Duo-hai and Xia Kiki saw them off at the door. After everyone left, Xia Kiki praised Lee Duo-hai for being so awesome and punched him lightly with her fist. Unexpectedly, Lee Duo-hai collapsed on the sofa. The nurse mistakenly thought Xia Kiki and Lee Duo-hai were a couple and scolded her for not knowing how to take care of someone. Xia Kiki felt deeply guilty and took care of Lee Duo-hai with great care, even specially cooking porridge for him to drink. Lee Duo-hai was also deeply moved by such a Xia Kiki. He asks Xia Kiki how she thinks he did. Xia Kiki gives him a perfect score. She is still confused about Lee Duo-hai's phone call with Jack. She asks Lee Duo-hai if he really knows Jack, the cruise salesman. Lee Duo-hai doesn't dare to tell her the truth and can only say that it was just an act. Mo-hen sees that the chairman isn't at work and quickly calls to ask where he is. Lee Duo-hai couldn't care less about the company going public at this point. He pretended to be the owner of a bun shop and told someone to make the buns with care and mix the filling well so that they would taste good. Mo-hen was completely confused. After Lee Duo-hai hung up, Xia Kiki quickly explained to him that she wasn't a gold digger. Last night, she was just trying to get back at her ex-boyfriend. She urged Lee Duo-hai not to be sad, as there might be a girl waiting for him in some corner. Once fate intervenes, she would immediately rush into his arms. Seeing the innocent and adorable Xia Kiki, Lee Duo-hai felt an indescribable sense of comfort. Just then, Mo-hen called again. Lee Duo-hai said he had to hurry to the dumpling shop or it would close, so he quickly processed his discharge papers. Director Ma from the Securities and Exchange Commission was about to hear Lee Duo-hai's next work plan, but Lee Duo-hai was looking for something. Seeing that Lee Duo-hai had lost something important, Mo-hen quickly came out to help him look for it. He asked him and found out that Lee Duo-hai had lost a lip balm. Mo-hen told Lee Duo-hai to hurry back to the meeting and that she would find it herself. After the meeting, Mo-hen handed the lip balm to Lee Duo-hai and asked him why he would delay the company's listing meeting for a lip balm. Lee Duo-hai thinks that Mo-hen doesn't understand him. He finally met a girl who doesn't think he's rich. This kind of person is hard to find in this world. After saying that, he quickly adds Xia Kiki on WeChat. Xia Kiki sees the WeChat notification and agrees to add Lee Duo-hai as a friend. She immediately replies, worried about how Lee Duohai's bun shop is doing. Lee Duohai is even more excited upon hearing this and quickly replies that he has already sold several baskets. Xiaokiki was genuinely happy to hear that Lee Duohai hadn't suffered any losses. Mohan thought Lee Duohai was acting like he'd lost his soul, chatting so enthusiastically with a girl all day long without caring what others might think. Lee Duohai didn't care. He'd dated countless women, and there were now over 100 of them, but none of them truly loved him. They were all after his money. Xiaokiki was different. She knew that he didn't despise her for selling buns, and he even let her pretend to be his girlfriend. The next day at work, Xiaokiki was looking at her phone when she saw the video of the scallops and felt so hungry that she wanted to eat some. She posted on social media to see if anyone could send her some scallops, and she would remember their kindness for the rest of her life. Before long, Lee Duohai sent her a large box of scallops. Xiaokiki was very excited to see her favorite food. Lee Duohai promptly delivered the scallops and invited Xiaokiki to have spicy hot pot for dinner. Xiaokiki loved spicy food and eagerly agreed to contact him after work. Pei Hua found Lee Duohai's behavior unusual. Just as Xiaokiki posted on her social media, Lee Duohai's scallops arrived. Lee Duohai must have fallen in love with Xiaokiki. Xiaokiki felt a little guilty. She had always thought that she and Lee Duohai were just ordinary friends. She didn't know when he had started to have feelings for her. She even mocked herself for being a femme fatale. Pei Hua told her to consider becoming the owner of a bun shop. Not only would she never have to worry about eating buns again, she could even open a chain store. Xiaokiki felt that she was a fashion designer, while Lee Duohai was just an old man who sold buns. The two of them could never be together in this lifetime. Pei Hua even said bluntly that they would never be together in their next lifetime. In order to make Lee Duohai give up, Xiaokiki had to make a firm decision and even gestured with her hands after saying it. In order to completely break Lee Duohai's heart, Xiaokiki made up an excuse that she had something to do and couldn't accompany him for dinner. Lee Duohai still wouldn't give up and asked her to have dinner together next time. Xiaokiki explained that she had to return to her hometown for work the next day. Lee Duohai felt as though he had swallowed a fly when he heard that Xiaokiki wouldn't be coming back. He had finally found a girl who didn't care about money. Their beautiful love had just begun but was immediately crushed in its infancy. Xiaokiki wished him success in his dumpling shop business and hoped he would find someone he loved in the future. Lee Duohai couldn't bear to let Xiaokiki leave like this and planned to come and see her off himself the next day. Xiaokiki was afraid that Lee Duohai would pester her, so she hurriedly hung up the phone. Lee Duohai was in a depressed mood and went home without even eating hot pot. Back at the villa, Xiaokiki sent Lee Duohai another message encouraging him to live a good life and do well in his bun shop business. More importantly, she told him to settle his marriage early. Lee Duohai was deeply moved by Xiaokiki's words of comfort. He hoped that if Xiaokiki ever returned, she would remember to contact him. Since Xiaokiki left, Lee Duohai had been restless. Every day, he would take the lip balm Xiaokiki had given him and apply it to his lips. Mohan noticed the chairman's gloomy expression and was curious. Upon learning that it was the girl he had been infatuated with who had left, he urged Lee Duohai to cheer up. Lee Duohai said that Mohan didn't understand what it was like to meet someone you liked. He said that if he fell in love again in the future, he would just be a bun seller, not the chairman of future group. If he liked someone, they would be together. But if they weren't meant to be, they would just end it. Lee Duohai rode around on a shared bike and chatted with beautiful women he met. The girls thought he was a lecher and didn't want to talk to him. Xiaokiki went to work as a car model to make money. Because of her good looks, a reporter noticed her and decided to use her portrait on the cover. One day, Lee Duohai saw a girl who looked a lot like Xiaokiki and quickly went up to chat with her. The girl had a friendly personality, and Lee Duohai asked her to go to the movies with him, and she agreed readily. When the two of them finished watching the movie and went to retrieve their bikes, several people rushed over and pinned Lee Duohai down. Lee Duohai was taken to the police station and quickly asked Mohan to bail him out. It turned out that Lee Duohai had been frequently hitting on girls, which had caught the attention of the local police. Additionally, there had been reports of lecherous men in the area, and they suspected that Lee Duohai was not a good person. In the end, Lee Duohai didn't get to flirt with the girl and was arrested by the police instead. Meanwhile, the ratings for the blind date show where love at first sight was the theme were getting worse every day. The key problem was that the guests they chose weren't good enough. The show's producer asked Mohan for help, saying that a high-quality guy like him would definitely attract viewers. Mohan thought Lee Duohai was suitable except for being a bit old. but there was no one else who could compare. Woman invited Lee Duo-hai and Mo Hen to dinner and specifically mentioned that the women on the show were carefully selected. For example, once you entered the boutique, participating would definitely bring surprises. Lee Duo-hai was conservative, but he heard that his two good friends were going and that he could hide his identity. After hesitating for a long time, he agreed to give it a try. At the same time, Xia Kiki asked her friend Chen Lia to help her translate some documents. She knew that Chen Lia was dating a married man. Xia Kiki advised her to stay away from that kind of man and find a new boyfriend. Chen Lia said that she was going to participate in a blind date show and wanted to invite Xia Kiki to go with her. Xia Kiki felt that she wouldn't find anyone she liked in a place like that. Besides, she didn't like that kind of dating. Lee Duo-hai and a few others went to the program for an interview, but Lee Duo-hai was eliminated. The reason was that he was poor and old. Lee Duo-hai turned and left, but Mo Han quickly stopped him. Mo Han went to the program to find his old classmate and threatened that if Lee Duo-hai didn't participate, he and Wu Min would also withdraw. Mo Han pleaded with the production team, and they finally agreed to let Lee Duo-hai participate. This made Lee Duo-hai feel very unfair. He thought that being poor meant he would be looked down upon when looking for a wife. From now on, in front of women, he would be just a dumpling shop owner. If all women despised him, then he wouldn't marry. On the day of the marriage program recording, Lee Duo-hai deliberately rode a bicycle to pretend to be poor, ignoring Mo Han's calls to get in the car. He wanted to experience the life of a poor person in advance. Xia Kiki's workplace was providing costumes for a love at first sight program. The boss asked Xia Kiki and Pei Hua who was willing to go. They played rock paper scissors, and Xia Kiki lost. Before the show started, they did some warm-up activities. Mo Han saw Lee Duo-hai standing alone in the corner and told him to take the initiative. Just then, he saw a woman waiting for a male guest and pushed Lee Duo-hai over to her. The woman noticed that Lee Duo-hai was calm and asked him if he was being too picky at his age. Lee Duo-hai said he didn't have many requirements, he just wanted a woman who was easy on the eyes and liked him. What he valued was the emotional connection between the two of them. Hearing Lee Duo-hai's confidence, the woman felt that he was not ordinary. Lee Duo-hai deliberately wore old clothes, but the woman saw through him at a glance. She also said that her boss was like Lee Duo-hai, dressed very simply but was actually a wealthy man. Lee Duo-hai admired the woman's keen eye and quickly explained that he only opened a bun shop. The woman knew that Lee Duo-hai was talented enough to participate in the show and immediately asked him how many chain stores he had opened. Lee Duo-hai immediately explained that he only had one dumpling shop. The woman thought his dumpling shop must be very large. Lee Duo-hai quickly explained that there were only 4 tables, because people who eat dumplings prefer to eat while holding them. Having more tables wouldn't be practical. Seeing that Lee Duo-hai was just the owner of a small dumpling shop, the woman got up and left. When she met a few other girls and heard that Lee Duo-hai ran a dumpling shop, they all laughed. Lee Duo-hai pretended to be poor and wanted to find true love, but was repeatedly slapped in the face by reality. When Chen Lia came to the blind date show, she was stopped at the door by the scumbag who had cheated on her. He told Chen Lia that his wife was coming back to the country soon and he would divorce her. Unexpectedly, Chen Lia didn't fall for his tricks and went to the matchmaking event on her own. She happened to meet Mo Han and introduced herself. She had been deceived by her ex-boyfriend, so her top priority in finding a partner was honesty. This was very similar to Mo Han, and the two felt an immediate connection upon their first meeting. Xia Kiki came to deliver clothes to the film crew and encountered Lee Duo-hai, who was just about to leave. At that moment, staff member Xiao Chen approached and was furious that Lee Duo-hai had left without permission. Xiao Chen spoke harshly, berating Lee Duo-hai and telling him to think of the bigger picture. Otherwise, today's show wouldn't be able to go on. Lee Duo-hai had no choice but to comply. He glanced at Xia Kiki. Xia Kiki nodded at him. As soon as Lee Duo-hai left the stage, the director called Xiao Chen again. There was still one female guest missing, and if they couldn't find someone, they would have to call her in as a replacement. When Lee Duo-hai saw Xia Kiki enter the show's venue, he had no idea what she was up to. At this moment, Xia Kiki stood in front of herself and gave Lee Duo-hai a flirtatious look. Lee Duo-hai was delighted and quickly nodded in return. After the show started, Chen Lia spoke first. She asked Mo Han a few questions. She felt that the two had the same view on love, so she decided to give it a try. The first couple successfully held hands and received enthusiastic applause from the audience. Next, Xia Kiki gave her speech. She didn't go through a lot of complicated processes and said directly that she liked the second male guest. Xia Kiki's first words stunned everyone. Before the show began, The girls had all found out that Lee Duo-hai sold buns. They never expected that the most beautiful girl in the entire venue would choose an older man who sold buns. Lee Duo-hai's mother was watching the live stream at home and was overjoyed to see her son finally chosen, especially since his bride-to-be was so beautiful and graceful. Xia Kiki believed that the taste of buns couldn't compare to a fancy meal. Many girls today would be thrilled to hold an invitation card, carry a designer handbag, and dine at a high-end restaurant. But she preferred buns because they had a special taste that was warm and comforting. Xia Kiki said to Lee Duo-hai, "If you don't mind, I'd like to come to your place to eat buns. After the show, I'd like to date you. Are you willing?" Lee Duo-hai was completely flustered by the sudden confession and couldn't respond immediately. Xia Kiki asked him if he didn't want to. Lee Duo-hai immediately replied, "I do." Xia Kiki and Lee Duo-hai successfully held hands and won a honeymoon trip to the Maldives. Lee Duo-hai's mother was overjoyed that her son's marriage had finally been settled. Although Lee Duo-hai had successfully held hands, he was well aware of his own limitations. He knew that Xia Kiki had done it to spare him embarrassment. Xia Kiki comforted Lee Duo-hai, telling him not to lose heart and to keep fighting. Just as they were talking, they saw Mo-han and Chen-lia. Xia Kiki hurried over to greet them. Lee Duo-hai sent a message to Mo-han, telling him to take young Chen-lia away from the scene. Mo-han immediately understood Lee Duo-hai's intention and hurried Chen-lia away. Back home, Pei Hua immediately recognized Lee Duo-hai as a big boss. Xia Kiki thought Pei Hua was joking and seriously introduced Lee Duo-hai as the owner of a dumpling shop. However, Pei Hua didn't believe her and insisted that Lee Duo-hai was a big boss. Hearing Pei Hua's stubbornness, Xia Kiki decided to go with the flow. She thought it was great that Lee Duo-hai was a big boss, and she would be the boss's wife. Pei Hua's sixth sense was spot on, but she couldn't remember where she had seen him before. She asked Xia Kiki to look up Lee Duo-hai's name on the computer, but there were no results. Xia Kiki dismissed Pei Hua's opinion. Chen-lia's ex-boyfriend was a married man who had agreed to divorce his wife to be with Chen-lia. She had long seen through his true intentions. In a fit of anger, she moved into Xia Kiki and Pei Hua's apartment. Xia Kiki and Pei Hua were particularly interested in her new boyfriend. They never dreamed that Chen-lia had chosen Lee Duo-hai's assistant as her boyfriend. Xia Kiki was praised by a client for her outstanding work, and her supervisor asked her to meet with the client. Wu Jia was particularly satisfied with Xia Kiki's outfit and asks her to be responsible for her future clothing. Wu Jia is about to go on a date with her boyfriend and wants Xia Kiki to pick out an outfit for her. Unexpectedly, someone arrives. In no time, Wu Jia brings her boyfriend. Xia Kiki is shocked. Isn't this her college classmate Guan Hao? Xia Kiki sees through him but doesn't say anything and even compliments Wu Jia on finding such a handsome man. Guan Hao was very embarrassed and wanted to find a hole to crawl into. Mo-han wanted to sign a dating agreement with Chen-lia. Chen-lia carefully read through the terms and felt that his idea was unbelievable. She wasn't after money and wasn't greedy, so signing this agreement would be like signing a piece of waste paper. Although Mo-han explained anxiously, Chen-lia still couldn't accept it. In the end, the two parted on bad terms. Xia Kiki is getting ready to go out to dinner with Lee Duo-hai. Pei Hua still thinks that Lee Duo-hai is a rich man and wants Xia Kiki to verify this. After listening to Pei Hua, Xia Kiki decides to test Lee Duo-hai. She suggests going to Lee Duo-hai's own bun shop to eat buns. Lee Duo-hai doesn't have a bun shop, so he gets very anxious when he hears Xia Kiki mention buns. Lee Duo-hai quickly said that dumplings were for breakfast and it was already lunchtime, so he would take her to eat hot pot. Xia Kiki believed Pei Hua's advice and insisted on eating dumplings. She just wanted to test whether Lee Duo-hai really owned a dumpling shop. Lee Duo-hai took the opportunity to call Mo-han while using the restroom and asked him to find a dumpling shop within an hour. The chairman gave the order, and Mo-han quickly dispatched more people to start searching for a dumpling shop. Lee Duo-hai called again to urge them to steam the buns quickly. Mo-han was worried because he couldn't find a bun shop and told him they weren't ready yet. Lee Duo-hai, hearing that Mo-han hadn't secured anything yet, reminded him that although old Zhang's bun shop was up for sale, the buns he made were delicious and told his men to learn from him. Mo-han caught the hint in Lee Duo-hai's words and hurried to old Zhang's bun shop, where he had eaten before. To buy time for Mo-han, Lee Duo-hai took Xia Kiki to play balloon popping. Xia Kiki had never played such games before, but under Lee Duo-hai's insistence, she reluctantly popped a few balloons. Just then, Lee Duo-hai received a message saying everything was settled. He knew that Mo-han had made arrangements. so he hailed a taxi and took Xia Kiki to the dumpling shop. Lee Duohai entered the shop and scolded the manager for not steaming the dumplings properly. The manager had already been replaced by one of Mo Hen's people, who quickly helped put on a show when the chairman arrived. Xia Kiki saw that Lee Duohai really did have a dumpling shop, which once again proved that Pei Hua's suspicions were unfounded. Just as the two were discussing what kind of filling to put in the dumplings, several people suddenly walked into the shop. It turned out they had ordered dumplings from the shop but had been waiting all morning and no one had delivered them to the construction site. They confronted the dumpling shop owner, demanding an explanation, and even threatened to beat him up. Xia Kiki quickly intervened to stop them. Lee Duohai immediately apologized and said that today's buns would be free of charge. Hearing the boss's generosity, the construction workers calmed down. After the buns were steamed, Xia Kiki accompanied Lee Duohai to deliver them. Lee Duohai pulled her, his unmarried wife, close to him, feeling inexplicably happy. After a tiring afternoon, Lee Duohai had just returned to the company when Mo Hen criticized him, saying that he was so desperate to be poor that he actually opened a bun shop. Lee Duohai self-deprecatingly said that he had no choice. With everything happening at once, he had no other option. If Xia Kiki found out that he had lied to her, their relationship would be ruined. If she really didn't mind that he opened a bun shop, then he would marry no one but Xia Kiki for the rest of his life. Xia Kiki returned home and told Pei Hua about the results of her test of Lee Duohai. Pei Hua couldn't remember where he had seen Lee Duohai, but he couldn't prove that he was a big boss. Xia Kiki had met Lee Duohai a few times and didn't dislike him very much. She told Pei Hua not to think about it, saying that whether he was rich or poor had nothing to do with her. Lee Duohai was busy reviewing documents for the company's IPO and even brought Mo Hen to the dumpling shop to work overtime, personally teaching the master how to mix the filling. He had to juggle both the company's IPO and the dumpling shop. He fantasized about retiring and running the dumpling shop with his wife. He looked forward to the happy days he would spend with Xia Kiki. Chen Lia was still being harassed by her ex-boyfriend. She firmly rejected this scumbag and lied that she was already in a relationship. After much hesitation, she finally decided to agree to Mo Hen's relationship agreement. She asked Mo Hen to sign a 1-month contract first, and if it worked out, they could renew it. Mo Hen claimed that he was very serious and cautious about relationships. He took the initiative to apologize to Chen Lia and explained that he didn't mean to be rude. Chen Lia did not continue to listen to his explanation. She was in a hurry to find a boyfriend to use as a shield, so she asked him to take out the agreement so they could discuss it together. Chen Lia wanted to revise the agreement according to her own requirements. Mo Hen had no choice but to take a step back. Both parties agreed to put up 30,000 yuan each, for a total of 60,000 yuan as a deposit. Mo Hen made it clear that the agreement was binding and must be enforced. If either party violated the agreement, 3,000 yuan would be deducted from the deposit. When Chen Lia heard about the penalty, she realized that she had to take it seriously. If she violated the agreement, she would lose a month's salary. Chen Lia took back the love agreement she had signed with Mo Hen. When Xia Kiki and Pei Hua saw it, they were speechless. The agreement specifically stated that they could hold hands during the relationship but could not kiss. Xia Kiki solemnly asked Chen Lia to stick to the bottom line. The three close friends even had a drink to celebrate. At midnight, Mo Hen called Chen Lia as per the agreement, which stipulated that they must check in with each other between 10 p.m. and midnight. However, Chen Lia was already asleep like a log. Xia Kiki heard the phone ringing non-stop and shouted at Chen Lia to answer it. Chen Lia was annoyed and told Mo Hen not to disturb her sleep, but according to the agreement, she couldn't get angry. Xia Kiki heard that being in a relationship was so tiring and thought it would be better to live alone. The next day, just as Chen Lia was about to go to work, her ex-boyfriend came after her. In order to get away, she called Mo Hen. Unexpectedly, Mo Hen made an excuse that she had something to do and couldn't make it. Mo Hen heard that Chen Lia was sick and didn't hesitate to come pick her up. Chen Lia knew that her ex-boyfriend was sitting in the lobby, so she quickly said that she felt dizzy and leaned on Mo Hen. Mo Hen didn't expect Chen Lia to kiss him and asked her what happened. Chen Lia said it was an accident, like seeing a cute kitten or puppy and not being able to resist kissing it. Mo Hen told Chen Lia very seriously that her behavior had violated the agreement and that she would have to pay a fine of 2,000 yuan according to the rules. He took advantage of her and still wanted to fine her, which made Chen Lia feel a little wronged. But they were both honest people, so they dared not speak up. Back home, Chen Lia received a deduction notice. She had violated Clause 27 of the agreement, which stated that during the relationship, No physical contact, including kissing, was allowed, and the penalty was a fine of 2,000. Facing Mo Hen's stubbornness, Chen Lia had no choice but to accept it. Li Duohai asked Zhao Bo to give the executives a business management course. Zhao Bo immediately recognized Mo Hen. That day, he had witnessed Mo Hen and Chen Lia's intimate behavior. When Zhao Bo left, he seemed to notice that Mo Hen didn't recognize him, so he took the initiative to introduce him to someone. Mo Hen's response made him relax a little, but suddenly Chen Lia called. Zhao Bo heard Chen Lia mention the road party and casually brought it up with Mo Hen. He pretended to offer Chen Lia some travel resources and suggested they have dinner together to discuss it. Mo Hen thought he meant well and accepted his invitation. When Chen Lia arrived at the meeting place, she saw her ex-boyfriend and felt even more upset. Zhao Bo pretended not to recognize her and actively discussed the roadside stall with her. Chen Lia directly rejected him. Mo Hen thought Chen Lia was being cold toward Zhao Bo. Chen Lia, however, warned him to be careful of people who go out of their way to get close to her, as they are not good people. Mo Hen was puzzled, thinking that it was only natural for someone interested in investing in the roadside stall to ask about its operations. Lucy's father asked Xia Kiki to accompany his child to the sports meet. Xia Kiki readily agreed to his request. Lucy saw that Li Duohai was kind and agreeable, so she readily agreed as well. The sports meet officially began. Thanks to the good cooperation between Li Duohai and Xia Kiki, the parent-child sports meet won first place. Li Duohai gave his acceptance speech. After all, he was a former chairman, so he spoke very appropriately and authoritatively. Xia Kiki was deeply impressed by his speech. Due to overexertion, Li Duohai went to the hospital for a checkup after the sports day. The doctor told him that he had a herniated disc and should avoid strenuous exercise in the future. However, Xia Kiki called him and said he had performed outstandingly at the sports day and wanted to treat him to a meal. Pei Hua believed that Xia Kiki was on the verge of success, while she was still struggling with rent. At the same time, Chen Lia rubbed some wine on her neck. Mo Hen rushed over and saw that Chen Lia was drunk, so he hurried to help her home. Unexpectedly, Chen Lia insisted that he carry her. Seeing that Mo Hen was unwilling, she yelled that if he didn't carry her, she would call for help like a passerby. Mo Hen had no choice but to carry her home. When they arrived at the door, Chen Lia saw her ex-boyfriend downstairs and deliberately kissed Mo Hen. Zhao Bo knew that Chen Lia was deliberately trying to make him jealous, but seeing Mo Hen carrying her into the building, he didn't dare to stop him. It turned out that Chen Lia had taken the initiative to meet her ex-boyfriend and given him back the 300,000 yuan he had invested in her software development. Zhao Bo didn't want to lose Chen Lia, so he didn't take the money and left. That night, when Chen Lia got home and saw Zhao Bo blocking the door, she quickly called Mo Hen for help, saying that she was drunk and wanted him to come pick her up. That's how the scene earlier happened. Chen Lia saw Zhao Bo hanging around downstairs and not leaving, so she told Mo Hen that she wasn't leaving that night either. Mo Hen was a gentleman, and besides, he and Chen Lia had signed an agreement that they would not have physical contact during their relationship. Unexpectedly, Chen Lia refused and said she would pay the fine if he had to accompany her. Zhao Bo saw that Mo Hen still hadn't come downstairs and hurriedly called Li Duohai. Mo Hen answered Li Duohai's call, but Chen Lia snatched the phone away. She immediately claimed to be Mo Hen's girlfriend. Li Duohai asked Mo Hen to take the call, but Chen Lia said Mo Hen was already asleep. Upon hearing that Mo Hen was asleep, Li Duohai thought that since they had kissed last time, he should be fined. Now that he had slept with her, he didn't know how to punish him. Li Duohai replied to Zhao Bo that Mo Hen had just gotten a girlfriend and was already asleep, and to let him come find him tomorrow. Zhao Bo's plan had failed, and he was even more unwilling to give up. He hesitated several times but didn't dare to go upstairs. Chen Lia had just woken up when she received a message saying that Mo Hen had fined her 6,000 yuan. She asked Xia Kiki to judge the matter for her. Xia Kiki thought that she was wrong to sign the love agreement in the first place. Now that she had been fined so much money, she must regret it. However, she thinks there might be something wrong with Mo Hen. Which man would refuse an active woman? Lu Lan, seeing that Xia Kiki didn't come to work, was furious and smashed her computer. Xia Kiki arrived at the company and was puzzled. Guan Hao found Xia Kiki and mentioned the incident after their last meeting at Wu Jie's house. He and Wu Jie often had secret meetings and frequently used Xia Kiki as a shield. Lu Lan mistakenly thought that he and Xia Kiki had rekindled their old feelings, so she angrily confronted Xia Kiki to settle the score. Xia Kiki walked home with a complicated mood, thinking that Guan Hao wasn't a decent person. Feeling depressed, she called Li Duohai to drink. Li Duohai knew she had been used by a scoundrel and sighed that she couldn't tell good men from bad. Xia Kiki was confused and asked Li Duohai what kind of man was good. Li Duohai was not modest at all and said that he was basically a good man. He told Xia Kiki to use him as a standard when looking for a boyfriend in the future. Seeing that Xia Kiki didn't believe in herself, Li Duohai told her that they could go on a trip so she could experience what it was like to be taken care of by a man. After all, they had love at first sight and the program had given them a chance. The carefree Xia Kiki agreed and even asked Li Duohai to be her mentor. She wanted to experience what a good man was like in real life. Little did they know that as soon as they arrived at the hotel abroad, they encountered a thief. Li Duohai rushed after him, but the thief escaped on a motorcycle. Both their phones, passports, and wallets were in the bag. This was a disaster. They had planned to have a good time in Thailand, but now it seemed like they wouldn't even be able to afford a meal. Seeing the beautiful pool, the two had originally come to enjoy sunbathing, stay in a sea view room, and eat lobster, but now they had nothing left. Xia Kiki was hungry and wanted to eat. Li Duohai took her to a seaside restaurant and told her to order whatever she wanted. The two penniless people ordered the best lobster and drank a lot of beer. Li Duohai not only peeled the lobster himself and fed it to Xia Kiki but also cut the crab and handed it to her. The two finally had a big meal. After eating their fill, Li Duohai was about to pay the bill. At that moment, the waiter was called away by a customer at the neighboring table. The customer was arguing with the owner, saying that the dumplings they had made were too bland. The owner tried to explain, but the customer wouldn't listen. They were very dissatisfied with the meal. While the two were arguing, Li Duohai stepped in to mediate. Li Duohai had learned some experience from running a dumpling shop and was quite skilled at making dumplings. In no time, the dumplings were ready, and the customers praised them highly. The dispute was resolved smoothly with Li Duohai's help. This made the owner very grateful and he offered to waive the bill for Li Duohai and Xia Kiki. Li Duohai told Xia Kiki to go pay the bill. The boss tried to stop Li Duohai from paying. Li Duohai thought it made sense and didn't argue further. After eating their fill, the two decided to go for a beach bath, but they unexpectedly discovered a thief stealing something. Li Duohai and Xia Kiki gave chase. The thief pulled out a sharp knife. Xia Kiki spoke to him in English, and the thief understood. As he turned his head, the two pounced and subdued him. The police praised Li Duohai and Xia Kiki for their heroic actions. Li Duohai, however, felt wronged. He and Xia Kiki had just arrived by plane, lost their belongings, and had nowhere to go. The police understood Li Duohai's request and took him and Xia Kiki to a room for prisoners. Although it was a bit simple, it was still livable for people with nowhere to go. Li Duohai went to a bar to sing and was noticed by a woman. She praised Li Duohai's singing and said he was her type. After saying that, she took out $200 bills. But just then, Xia Kiki showed up and threatened Li Duohai. The woman, seeing someone interfering, got angry and asked who she was. Xia Kiki admitted that she was Li Duohai's girlfriend. The two were playing on the beach when the local police came over and said that the thief who had stolen their belongings had been caught, and the items had been recovered. The two could finally stay in a seaside apartment. Their sweet love life began. Li Duohai was so happy that he didn't want to leave. He planned to open a bun shop by the sea and let Xia Kiki be the boss. When they had nothing to do, they could surf and watch the sunrise and sunset. Xia Kiki asked Li Duohai why he was so good to her and if he would still be so good to her after they returned to China. Seeing that Li Duohai didn't say anything, Xia Kiki thought he was going to change his mind. Unexpectedly, Li Duohai quickly added, "I will." When Pei Hua arrives at the hotel to deliver the dress, she finds the hotel brochure open and is stunned. Li Duohai's photo is on the front page, introducing him as the chairman of the Future Group, which owns 5-star hotels and other businesses. Isn't this Xia Kiki's boyfriend who makes steamed buns? When Li Duohai returns, he tells Mohan his thoughts, believing that hiding his identity is deceiving Xia Kiki. He asked Mohan to reserve the hotel's largest revolving restaurant for tomorrow to tell Xia Kiki the truth. Pei Hua revealed Li Duohai's true identity and told Xia Kiki to open a bank account for her, saying she'd have enough money for the rest of her life. Although Xia Kiki had suspected Li Duohai, she was still shocked by Pei Hua's words. She immediately stood up to go find Li Duohai and ask for clarification, but Pei Hua quickly stopped her. Pei Hua believed that Li Duohai had many women around him, so why did he choose Xia Kiki? It was because Xia Kiki was innocent and didn't know his true identity. If she brought it up herself, Li Duohai would think she was after his money. Xia Kiki had previously looked down on Li Duohai for selling buns, but after several months of interaction, especially during their honeymoon, she believed he was a good man. Yin was overjoyed to hear that Li Duohai had lost something in Thailand. Upon hearing that he was having a good time with Xia Kiki, she became displeased and immediately called to arrange a meeting with Li Duohai. Yin instigated Li Duohai, claiming that Xia Kiki was only after his money. She also warned Li Duohai that she had been waiting for him to change his mind. Li Duohai couldn't calm her down. He could marry Xia Kiki with his status as the owner of a bun shop. If he did that, Yin would have no reason to interfere. Li Duohai had originally wanted to reveal his true identity to Xia Kiki, but because of Yin's actions, he had to change his plan. He asked Mo Hen to cancel the restaurant reservation. After all, Yin was his ex-girlfriend. If something really happened to her, Li Duohai would feel terrible. Li Duohai immediately proposed to Xia Kiki. Xia Kiki had not known him for long and rejected him. Pei Hua thought Xia Kiki was foolish and told her to quickly agree while Li Duohai was hot-headed. If he changed his mind one day, where would she find such a rich man? Xia Kiki felt that Li Duohai was not being honest with her, which proved that he was still guarding himself. Therefore, she felt that there was no need for them to be together. Xia Kiki insisted on her belief that she wanted to find a man who truly loved her. She also wanted to find a way to test Li Duohai. Before Xia Kiki could decide how to test Li Duohai, her father arrived. Lao Xia had just gotten out of the car when he encountered two thugs, but they weren't his men. Tan Lin believed that Xia Kiki was comparing herself to a bag seller, which was incomparable to him, a famous designer. He urged Xia Kiki to cut off all contact with Li Duohai. Facing Tan Lin's pursuit, Xia Kiki advised him not to harbor any illusions. She and Li Duohai not only admired each other but were also planning to get married. At that moment, Pei Hua called Xia Kiki to go deliver some clothes together. In her haste, Xia Kiki forgot her phone. At that moment, her phone displayed a call from Dad. Tan Lin hesitated but couldn't resist answering. Upon hearing that Xia Kiki's father had arrived, Tan Lin quickly drove over to pick him up. He thought that if he could win over his future father-in-law, it would only be a matter of time before he could have Xia Kiki. Lao Xia saw Tan Lin's handsome appearance and thought he was his future son-in-law. Seeing Tan Lin's many trophies, he praised him for his bright future. At this moment, Xia Kiki suddenly returned to look for her cell phone and was very surprised to see her father. When she heard that Tan Lin had answered the phone, she was quite grateful to her father. Tan Lin wanted to invite Lao Xia to dinner that night. Xia Kiki said that her boyfriend was treating her to dinner. Lao Xia realized that he had misunderstood when his daughter refused Tan Lin. He thought that Tan Lin was so outstanding, so his future son-in-law must be no ordinary person. Xia Kiki called Li Duohai and said she wanted to meet him. But tonight, Li Duohai had to host a dinner party for French guests. When he heard that he was going to meet his future father-in-law, Li Duohai hurriedly said it was fine. Seeing that Li Duohai is about the same age as himself, Lao Xiao's face falls. Seeing that the situation is a little awkward, Xia Kiki quickly steps in to smooth things over. Lao Xia sees that Li Duohai is not young and that it's not his career that has held him back. When he learns that he has opened a bun shop, his expression immediately changes. Lao Xia looks at his daughter and thinks that she must have poor judgment. He thinks that opening a chain of bun shops isn't a bad idea. When he asked Li Duohai, he found out that he only had one shop and was preparing to expand. Lao Xia then asked Li Duohai if he had a house and how big it was. Li Duohai was rich enough to rival a country, but he couldn't bring himself to say that he was the owner of a bun shop. Lao Xia was very angry when he learned that his future son-in-law had nothing, so he asked Xia Kiki to sit next to him. Lao Xia felt uneasy and decided to go to the dumpling shop to take a look. The three arrived at the dumpling shop, and Lao Xia examined it carefully. He saw two people steaming dumplings in a small room with 4 tables, not even enough for one person to eat. He asked them how long they had been dating. Upon learning that they had just started, Lao Xia told them to break up immediately. Xia Kiki thought Li Duohai was a good guy and complained that her father was meddling too much. Unexpectedly, Lao Xia slammed the table and told Xia Kiki to break up immediately, or else he would beat them up. Outside the dumpling shop, Lao Xia thought his daughter had terrible taste. She could have chosen a social elite, a successful young man, but she had to choose a dumpling seller. Xia Kiki had been taught by her father not to despise the poor and love the rich. Lao Xia believed that Li Duohai would never become wealthy in his lifetime. If he agreed to marry Xia Kiki, it would truly be like the saying, a flower planted in cow dung. Xia Kiki told Li Duohai to improve his relationship with her father. Otherwise she would be in a difficult position in the middle. Li Duohai called his future father-in-law to find a place to entertain him. However, Lao Xia refused to give him face and hung up the phone directly. Seeing that Li Duohai had been rejected, Xia Kiki quickly called her father to provoke him. Was it because he was too harsh during their first meal together and felt embarrassed to meet again? Lao Xia insisted on having dinner with Li Duohai. Li Duohai believed that as men, they should be straightforward. They started with a bottle of wine, but it wasn't enough, so they asked the waiter to bring 2 more bottles. Li Duohai immediately declared that money meant nothing to him. Lao Xia thought Li Duohai was just bragging and told him to buy a villa to prove it. Li Duohai said a villa was too small for him. Lao Xia realized there was something off. Li Duohai was a master at bragging, and even Xia Kiki had been fooled by him. Li Duohai immediately claimed that his feelings for Xia Kiki couldn't be measured by money. He even started calling Lao Xia brother. Li Duohai was drunk and kept switching between calling him brother and little brother, which made Lao Xia so angry he wanted to hit him. But before he could act, Li Duohai stumbled and fell to the ground. Lao Xia was about to take him to the hospital and hail a taxi when he ran into Tan Lin, who was just getting off work. So Tan Lin helped Lao Xia take Li Duohai to the hospital. Xia Kiki also rushed to the hospital. Seeing her father had drunk Li Duohai into unconsciousness, she wanted to tell her father that Li Duohai wasn't an ordinary person, but she thought better of it and went back. Lao Xia thought Li Duohai could drink, but he didn't expect him to be no match for an old man. However, after eating with Li Duohai, he realized that Li Duohai was just a braggart. Lao Xia told Xia Kiki to break up with Li Duohai immediately and never see him again. Xia Kiki told her father to be reasonable, otherwise she would get pregnant with Li Duohai's child. Seeing that the two were about to argue, Tan Lin quickly stepped in to mediate, saying that Xia Kiki was just being impulsive. In a few days, she would come to her senses and break up with Li Duohai. Lao Xia believed that Tan Lin's good looks were Xia Kiki's standard for choosing a partner. The next morning, Lao Xia was persuaded by Tan Lin to go play billiards. Seeing how familiar the two seemed, it was a bit unusual. Xia Kiki hurriedly found Li Duohai to discuss a plan. She had thought that asking Lao Xia out for a meal would improve their relationship, but she didn't expect Tan Lin to take advantage of the situation. Just as the two were discussing their next move, Lao Xia brought Tan Lin to a bun shop. Lao Xia thought that Tan Lin was a role model and told his daughter to find someone like him. Xia Kiki thought that her father was hopeless for interfering in her marriage. He had already talked to Li Duohai and now he was involving his colleague, making everyone feel very awkward. That day, while observing at Tan Lin's studio, Lao Xia accidentally drank some benzene and was rushed to the hospital. Lao Xia actually sent Xia Kiki away and asked Tan Lin to take care of him. Xia Kiki quickly reported to Li Duohai that Tan Lin and his father were getting along better and better. This meant that the obstacle between him and his father was getting smaller and smaller. Li Duohai heard that something was wrong and rushed to the hospital to see his father-in-law. Lao Xia ignored Li Duohai and chatted happily with Tan Lin. Li Duohai took the initiative to strike up a conversation so that they wouldn't ignore him. Unexpectedly, Lao Xia raised his hand and swatted a fly. Li Duohai wasn't angry. Who told him to marry someone else's daughter and keep interrupting their conversation? Tan Lin takes Li Duohai away from the hospital room and uses Lao Xia to threaten Li Duohai. He believes that a marriage without the support of parents will not succeed. He thinks that Li Duohai is inferior to himself in every way, so he should break up with Xia Kiki as soon as possible. Li Duohai tells him not to look down on people. It's not only designers who can make Xia Kiki happy. Even someone who sells buns can achieve success. Li Duohai deliberately flattered Lao Xia by saying he wanted to learn boxing, but to his surprise, Lao Xia agreed immediately. Lao Xia had once been a national champion, and Li Duohai sensed he was about to get beaten up. But since the words were already out, he couldn't back down. Just then, Mohan called to say Director Ma was coming to the company for an inspection and told him to hurry back. But Lao Xia didn't hesitate and walked toward the boxing ring, leaving Li Duohai with no choice but to step up and spar with his future father-in-law. Lao Xia warned Li Duohai not to harass his daughter. Li Duohai believed that Tan Lin was the one harassing Xia Kiki. Hearing Li Duohai's stubbornness, Lao Xia told him to stop talking and throw a punch. Li Duohai's amateur boxing skills were no match for the former national champion. and he was knocked to the ground with a hook punch. Xiaoqi saw that her father was being too harsh and accused him of taking revenge for personal reasons. However, Lao Xia believed that Li Duohai had brought it upon himself. Li Duohai woke up and immediately went to the company for a meeting. Mo Hen saw that Li Duohai was injured and was very worried. Li Duohai told Mo Hen about the incident and decided to fight Lao Xia to the end. Xiaoqi was worried that her father's bad temper would lead him to teach Li Duohai a lesson again. Lao Xia believes that he is a coach, and if his students want to learn boxing, he must teach them. However, this kid just got beaten up, so even if he had 100 times the courage, he wouldn't dare come back. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, Li Duohai came rushing over. Xiaoqi tried to stop the two from fighting, but neither of them would back down, and a big fight was about to begin. Lao Xia believed that Li Duohai could still surrender now. Otherwise, it wouldn't just be a matter of fainting. He might end up paralyzed. Li Duohai was willing to risk everything to marry Xiaoqi, even if it meant dying. As the countdown began, Xiaoqi widened her eyes and urgently shouted for Li Duohai to get off the stage. Lao Xia roared and swung a powerful punch with all his strength. Seeing that Li Duohai didn't dodge, he pulled his fist back midair. Seeing this young man's tenacity, Lao Xia sighed in admiration, took off his gloves, and left silently. Li Duohai's mother received a call from Mo Hen. Mo Hen told her that Xiaoqi's father had arrived. Li Duohai returned home and was scolded by his mother. No matter what his reasons were, deceiving an elder was wrong. Li Duohai's mother waited until her son left and went to find Lao Xia alone. She hoped Lao Xia could give her son another chance. Whether Li Duohai and Xiaoqi could be together or not, they deserved another chance. That evening, while Lao Xia and Xiaoqi were out for a walk, he suddenly brought up the punch from that afternoon. If Xiaoqi hadn't shouted "Dad," he wouldn't have stopped the punch. Hearing her father's words, Xiaoqi felt a little guilty. Lao Xia truly loved his daughter. He wasn't deliberately picking on Li Duohai. He just couldn't help himself. There wasn't a father in the world who didn't love his daughter. Since Xiaoqi's mother passed away, he and Xiaoqi had been relying on each other for survival. Seeing his daughter grow up day by day, he hoped she would find a good family in the future. But to his surprise, she rejected Tan Lin, a fine young man, and instead fell for Li Duohai, a dumpling seller. Lao Xia planned to return to his hometown, and Li Duohai and Xiaoqi accompanied him. Seeing that Li Duohai was a decent man, he decided to give them more time to get to know each other. If Li Duohai dared to let Xiaoqi down, he would be the first to oppose it. With her father's promise, Xiaoqi wanted to get the truth out of Li Duohai. She asked him if he was willing to give her everything. Li Duohai was stubborn and still didn't tell her the truth. Xiaoqi saw that he was pretending and deliberately said that she didn't care about money. But with just a bun shop, wasn't he getting off easy by marrying her? After the two got their marriage certificate, Li Duohai took Xiaoqi to his company. He immediately introduced Xiaoqi to the hotel, which also belonged to him. Xiaoqi already knew that Li Duohai was a rich man, so she wasn't surprised to hear his introduction. But she immediately remembered her best friend's advice: if Li Duohai told her the truth, she must act particularly surprised. It would be best to freeze in place for a few seconds. Xiaoqi pretended to be confused and deliberately acted surprised. Li Duohai explained to her that he was the owner of the hotel and that this was his territory. When he first met Xiaoqi, she asked him what he did, and he happened to be carrying a bag of buns. He casually said that he sold buns, but he didn't expect her to believe him. As the two grew closer, Li Duohai felt that Xiaoqi was not like other girls who were only after his money, so he asked her to forgive him for his dishonesty. He felt that Xiaoqi was not like other girls who were only after his money, so he asked her to forgive him for his dishonesty. Li Duohai took Xiaoqi on a yacht to surf and told her about his plans. He was preparing to hold a grand wedding and marry Xiaoqi in style, but Xiaoqi wanted to keep it low-key and just invite their relatives and friends to witness the event. Pei Hua envied Xiaoqi for finally marrying into a wealthy family. On the other hand, Xiaoqi felt a bit calm. She felt guilty toward Li Duohai. Hiding the fact that she had known his true identity all along was unfair to him. Pei Hua comforted her, saying that only she and Xiaoqi knew about it, and she would keep it a secret forever. Mo Han came to Chen Lia's house to change the curtains. He didn't expect Chen Lia and her ex-boyfriend to come in. Zhao Wenba wants to file for divorce in order to win back Chen Lia. Mo Han finally understands that Chen Lia is using him to get rid of her ex-boyfriend. In his panic, he falls off a small ladder. Mo Han gets up and leaves. Chen Lia rushes out after him. saying that he misunderstood her. She explains that he didn't hear what he thought he heard. Unexpectedly, Mo Hen wouldn't listen to her. Shuayin heard that Lee Duohai had gotten a marriage certificate and couldn't sit still. She went to find him to confront him. Lee Duohai told her to wish him well. He had fulfilled his promise and married Xia Kiki with a bun shop. Shuayin believed that Xia Kiki had known all along that Lee Duohai was a rich man. Lee Duohai wouldn't easily believe Shuayin's words and told her to go cool off. After Shuayin left, she called Lu Dong. She asked Lu Dong to tell Lee Duohai that Xia Kiki was his mistress. Shuayin wanted him to do something bad to interfere, but Lu Dong was unwilling. So Shuayin blackmailed him with shares. If he could break up Lee Duohai and Xia Kiki, she would give him shares in her company. With Shuayin's promise, Lu Dong quickly found a stack of materials. Before long, Shuayin found Lee Duohai. Lee Duohai didn't believe her and thought the photos were photoshopped. Unexpectedly, Shuayin called him stupid. She wouldn't be able to Photoshop someone he knew, so he called Lu Dong over to ask him about it. Lu Dong said that Xia Kiki had spent a lot of his money and even maxed out his credit card. He even took out a video of the two of them at the mall. The video was definitely real. It even showed Xia Kiki and Lu Dong greeting each other. Lee Duohai didn't pay much attention to him as he was carrying large bags, but he was surprised by the person who came up behind him. It was his own newlywed wife, Xia Kiki. Seeing that she had achieved her goal, Shuayin quickly signaled to Lu Dong to leave. After Lu Dong left, Shuayin explained the situation to Lee Duohai. At that time, Xia Kiki wasn't with Lu Dong and turned around and fell in love with you. In fact, Xia Kiki is just a gold digger who came to cheat you out of your money. Everyone knows this, but you're the only one who doesn't. Lee Duohai remembered when he first met Xia Kiki. Xia Kiki seemed to be interested in money. When he told her how much he was worth, Xia Kiki wasn't particularly surprised. All signs indicated that Xia Kiki knew long ago that he was a rich man. Xia Kiki was busy planning her wedding with a wedding planning company and asked that it not be too extravagant. Unexpectedly, Lee Duohai called and asked to see Xia Kiki. Lee Duohai asked Xia Kiki to meet him at the shore and asked her if she had known about his identity all along. Xia Kiki did not realize the seriousness of the situation and told him everything. Pei Hua mentioned that she had seen him before, but at the time, she and Lee Duohai were just friends, so she didn't think much of it. She never expected that Lee Duohai would still be fixated on this matter. Lee Duohai asked her a soul-searching question, leaving Xia Kiki so angry that her scalp tingled. They only found out about Lee Duohai's true identity after returning from their trip. At the time, she wanted to ask Lee Duohai about it, but Pei Hua stopped her. She believed that Lee Duohai had a reason for hiding his identity. Lee Duohai had deceived Xia Kiki, but he brazenly claimed that it was a test. His double standard greatly dissatisfied Xia Kiki. Unexpectedly, Lee Duohai suddenly mentioned Lu Dong. Xia Kiki asked him where he heard about him. Lee Duohai asked her what she liked about Lu Dong. He clearly knew she was married yet still insisted on pursuing her. What kind of lie is that? Why deceive someone's feelings? Xia Kiki tried to explain, but Lee Duohai wouldn't listen and insisted on divorcing her. Meanwhile, Shuayin leaked to the magazine editor that Lee Duohai had married his new lover for her money. Their marriage was already at an end. Mo Hen received a call from the company saying the journalists had already come looking for him. They wanted to know about the chairman's divorce. Mo Hen hurriedly found Lee Duohai to find out what was going on. Lee Duohai actually said there was no need to deny the rumors. He really wanted to divorce Xia Kiki. Mo Hen pleaded with him not to act impulsively, as it would affect the company's IPO. If he had to divorce, he should wait at least 3 months. Xia Kiki was in a terrible mood. She believed that as long as they loved each other, nothing else mattered. She never thought they couldn't withstand the test. Pei Hua bluntly called her foolish, saying Lee Duohai had been scarred by materialistic women. He now believed everyone was after his money. Mo Hen calmed Lee Duohai down, explaining that for the company and the shareholders, they must delay the divorce for at least 3 months. Their wedding must still proceed, as this was the most effective way to dispel rumors. Pei Hua, however, believed Xia Kiki shouldn't just give up like this. There was definitely something fishy going on with Shuayin, but no matter how much Pei Hua tried to persuade her, Xia Kiki refused to change her mind. Mo Hen found Xia Kiki and revealed their pleas. Xia Kiki heard that she had to divorce Lee Duohai and wait 3 months for the company's reputation, and she flew into a rage. He said if he wanted to divorce, he should just divorce. If he wanted to wait, he should just wait. Who did he think he was? Mo Hen asked Xia Kiki to help with one last favor. and she could make her demands. Xia Kiki thought it sounded like a business deal and asked Mo Han what he meant. Mo Han agreed that the company would give Xia Kiki 5 million yuan, and if he wasn't satisfied, they could negotiate further. Seeing that Li Duohai had put a price on the marriage, he was furious. Xia Kiki angrily scolded Mo Han, saying he didn't want to be with Li Duohai for even a minute longer and demanded he divorce him immediately. Seeing that Mo Han couldn't handle Xia Kiki, Li Duohai had no choice but to go out himself. You agreed to divorce so readily. I think you're quite reasonable. Xia Kiki forced a smile. Although she loved Li Duohai, she didn't love him enough to marry him. Li Duohai played the emotional card, saying that his mother was old. If she found out that her son was getting married, she would be heartbroken. So he asked Xia Kiki to give him and his mother 3 months, and get a divorce as soon as the 3 months were up, without delay. Li Duohai thought that Xia Kiki liked his money, so he told her to ask for as much as she wanted and not to be shy. Xia Kiki felt wronged, so she raised the price. Li Duohai was actually happy to see Xia Kiki raise the price by 5 million yuan. He thought that this was Xia Kiki's true colors, so he readily agreed. However, Xia Kiki insisted that he go with her to take wedding photos. The two went to the studio, and Li Duohai kept a sour expression the entire time. He thought that taking wedding photos for a 3-month marriage was pointless. Li Duohai went along with Xia Kiki, but his forced smile looked worse than crying. Just as they were taking photos, Li Duohai's former fiancée suddenly showed up to cause trouble. Seeing her husband about to run off with his ex-fiancée, Xia Kiki told him to take another set of traditional Chinese-style photos. Hearing Xia Kiki call Li Duohai husband, Shui Yin tells her to know her place. Seeing the two women fighting over him, Li Duohai's expression is very complicated. He wonders why it is so difficult to find someone who truly loves him even though he is so rich. Li Duohai gives Xia Kiki the agreement he has drafted. He will pay Xia Kiki 1 million first, and then transfer the remaining 9 million to her according to the contract. Xia Kiki is very dissatisfied with the agreement, which only mentions money and nothing else. She wants Li Duohai to treat her well for 3 months and pamper her unconditionally to make her feel the happiness of marriage. Li Duohai thinks that 3 months is enough and there is no need for so many rules and regulations. Unexpectedly, Xia Kiki firmly disagrees. Either he adds the content or they get a divorce right now. You must make me feel that newlyweds have a happy life and that life is beautiful. Li Duohai had no choice but to agree to Xia Kiki's demands and take the marriage seriously. He had to be devoted to her, not look at other women, and not make her jealous. Now that Xia Kiki was spending money freely, she would definitely not let herself be wronged in these 3 months. The next day, she took Pei Hua with her to go shopping for furniture. She created a tailor-made wedding room for herself. The wedding proceeded as planned. Seeing this scene reminded Li Duohai of his wedding with Shui Yin. The terrifying nightmare seemed like it was just yesterday, and today, he had to relive the same nightmare. But this time, he couldn't run away. He had to keep acting according to the contract. When the beautiful bride slowly walked into the venue, Li Duohai glanced at her disdainfully. He thought to himself that no matter how beautiful the bride was, it would only last 3 months. At that moment, Shui Yin also arrived at the wedding venue. Seeing the bride she thought was hers being taken away by Xia Kiki, she was filled with jealousy and hatred. When the host announced the end of the wedding, Xia Kiki suddenly shouted, "There's one more part we can't skip." Xia Kiki gave her precious first kiss, and the guests applauded enthusiastically. None of them could have imagined that this seemingly happy couple would divorce 3 months later. On their wedding night, Li Duohai stared expressionlessly at the TV. Xia Kiki, however, sat beside him with alluring charm. Li Duohai told Xia Kiki to snap out of it and not get too into the role. Seeing Li Duohai's back, Xia Kiki secretly plotted to seduce him that night. Before long, Xia Kiki came to find Li Duohai with a pillow. Li Duohai knew it was impossible to get rid of Xia Kiki tonight. He believed that a 3-month marriage with Xia Kiki wasn't worth ruining another young girl's life. The next morning, Xia Kiki specially prepared a heartfelt breakfast for her husband. She called out a few times but received no response, so she ran upstairs to call Li Duohai. She happened to overhear him talking on the phone with Shui Yin. Hearing the two of them still being affectionate, Xia Kiki stormed into the bedroom. Xia Kiki grabbed Li Duohai's cell phone and accused him of contacting his ex-fiancée on the morning of their wedding day and not taking her, his new wife, seriously. Li Duohai looked wronged and said that Shui Yin had contacted him first and that she was indeed sick. Xia Kiki didn't care. Anyway, He was hers for the next 3 months and was not allowed to have any contact with any other woman. Lee Duo-hai got dressed and was ready to go to work. But Xia Kiki blocked his way and demanded that he spend his honeymoon with her. Seeing that Xia Kiki was clinging to him and wouldn't let him leave, he took out a bank card and told her to buy whatever she wanted. Seeing that her husband was using money to get rid of her, Xia Kiki drove to her husband's shopping mall. The mall staff knew that she was the chairman's wife and treated her with the utmost respect. Xia Kiki asked the salesperson to pack all the new arrivals in her size and send them to the chairman's office. Lee Duo-hai was complaining to Mo-han about how he couldn't stand his new life with Xia Kiki. Unexpectedly, the secretary knocked on the door and said that the things the wife had bought had been delivered. Seeing the bags and packages Xia Kiki had bought, Mo-han couldn't help but laugh. He thought that Xia Kiki was really funny and had a way with the chairman. After buying clothes for herself, Xia Kiki was picking out clothes for her mother-in-law. Lee Duo-hai asked Xia Kiki to give him a break, so she agreed to come home for dinner. Having achieved her goal, Xia Kiki hurried home to cook dinner. When she heard that she was going on an overseas trip, she was very happy. But when she heard that she was going alone, she was no longer happy. Lee Duo-hai was afraid that Xia Kiki would cling to him, so he tried every means to get her to go on the trip. He talked about how nice the clothes in France were and how she could go to the North Pole to see penguins. Xia Kiki knew what he was up to and wanted to send him to the moon. 3 months would pass in the blink of an eye, and she wouldn't let him off so easily. Lee Duo-hai, in order to help Lee Duo-hai lose weight, she dragged him out of bed early in the morning to go jogging. As a result, Lee Duo-hai was exhausted from trying to keep up with Xia Kiki and fell asleep in the office. Mo-han found out that Xia Kiki didn't let Lee Duo-hai sleep and told him to take care of his health. Don't ruin your health in 3 months. Shuayin came to Xia Kiki's studio to pick out clothes. The manager said she was a clothes hanger and any clothes looked good on her. But then Xia Kiki came back. Since Xia Kiki had married a billionaire, her status was completely different from before. The manager repeated what he had told Shuayin earlier. Shuayin felt very uncomfortable and threw the clothes down before leaving. Lu Ge came specially to visit Xia Kiki. Seeing that Xia Kiki had gotten married, he scolded her for not telling him. Xia Kiki felt it was hard to explain and asked Lu Ge how the small shop business was going. Upon learning that Lu Ge was planning to take over a hot pot restaurant but lacked the funds, Xia Kiki is very willing to help, even if it means investing her own money, which makes Lu Ge feel bad. The two go to the hot pot restaurant to discuss the deal. In the end, the rich are still rich and capricious, and they buy the restaurant for 800,000 yuan. Lee Duo-hai hears that Xia Kiki wants the money and tells her not to spend it recklessly. This money is her livelihood for the rest of her life. Xia Kiki says she wants to take the money to Hong Kong for a vacation. Lee Duo-hai was overjoyed at the thought of finally being rid of Xia Kiki. He told her to enjoy herself in Hong Kong and then travel to Europe to visit several countries. He would reimburse her for staying in 5-star hotels and buying luxury goods. Lee Duo-hai immediately instructed the finance department to transfer 1 million yuan to Xia Kiki as soon as possible. What he didn't expect was that Xia Kiki had secretly taken over a hot pot restaurant without telling him. To attract customers for the hot pot restaurant, Xia Kiki sent Lee Duo-hai's luxury car over. The driver dared not speak up after all. She was the chairman's wife. Lee Duo-hai thought he could finally have some peace and quiet. But when he returned home, he saw Xia Kiki again. He knew she had invested in the hot pot restaurant and accused her of deliberately causing trouble for herself. Instead of going to Hong Kong to shop and enjoy herself, she insisted on working hard to serve others. Xia Kiki said that it was a long-term investment, and when the time came, even if Lee Duo-hai didn't want her anymore, she would still have a place to eat. Xia Kiki went to the hot pot restaurant to check on business, but found that it wasn't going well. If things continued like this, it wouldn't be long before it went out of business. Xia Kiki promoted the hot pot to Future Group and had all the employees try it. Unexpectedly, Lee Duo-hai arrived with guests. He was quite surprised to see that the restaurant had been turned into a hot pot restaurant. Surprisingly, the guests liked it. Hearing that the guests enjoyed the hot pot, Lee Duo-hai had no choice but to join them for a meal. Meanwhile, Xia Kiki held a mid-level meeting and resolved several difficult issues. Due to her capable performance, she earned everyone's trust and respect. Lee Duo-hai returned home to hear Xia Kiki assigning tasks and even speaking on behalf of the chairman, asking him why he was interfering in company matters. Moreover, Xia Kiki had unilaterally increased the lunch allowance by 20 yuan. Xia Kiki, however, shrugged it off, claiming that everything she did was for the sake of retaining talent. Lee Duo-hai immediately confronted her, asking, Do you know how much it costs to increase everyone's lunch allowance by 20 yuan? Xia Kiki told him to learn from Bill Gates in the United States, saying that those who win the hearts of the people win the world. She then pulled out a financial report, explaining that she had created a financial plan for every employee in the company, and by the end of the year, everyone would receive double bonuses. Although none of these actions had been approved by Li Duohai, they were indeed done with the employees' best interests in mind. Li Duohai felt frustrated and helpless, slamming the table in anger. Just then, Xia Kiki's hotline phone rang. Li Duohai couldn't understand why Xia Kiki, who was so eager to marry a wealthy man, didn't go out and enjoy herself. Instead, she opened a hot pot restaurant and now wanted to manage the employees' finances. This was completely different from the Xia Kiki in his mind. Li Duohai thought that Xia Kiki didn't want to go out, so he planned to go on a business trip himself. Unexpectedly, Mo Hen wouldn't let him go. They were currently negotiating a cooperation with a French company. If Li Duohai left, the cooperation would be terminated. The next day, when Li Duohai arrived at the company, everyone he met thanked him. Li Duohai immediately asked Mo Hen what was going on. Mo Hen said, "Didn't you order breakfast for everyone?" Li Duohai heard that it was Xia Kiki making decisions on her own again and told Mo Hen to cancel it immediately. Mo Hen thought that canceling something he had just done was clearly going to offend people. Li Duohai believed that company rules must be followed. You can't keep changing things because of one person. Otherwise, the company will turn into a chaotic marketplace. That day, Zhao Wenba came to visit Chen Lia's home. Chen Lia's mother was very enthusiastic to see a guest. The next day, Mo Hen found Zhao Wenba and asked him to stay away from Chen Lia. He and Chen Lia were getting along very well, and if everything went smoothly, they would get married by the end of the year. Zhao Wenba spoke as Chen Lia's ex-boyfriend, insisting on competing fairly with Mo Hen. Future Group was preparing a banquet for French guests. Pete, however, wanted to meet the chairman's wife. Li Duohai had no choice but to call Xia Kiki. She told Xia Kiki that tonight's banquet was particularly formal, with many important guests in attendance. Li Duohai repeatedly urged Xia Kiki to behave herself, fearing she might embarrass him at the dinner. Pei Hua arrived at the dinner but was mocked by the wealthy ladies. Just then, Xia Kiki arrived, but the ladies became even more arrogant. Xia Kiki, as the hostess, urged everyone to come and have fun to avoid causing a scene. However, the wealthy women, seeing Xia Kiki dressed in hot pot restaurant attire, ordered her to go to the kitchen. Xia Kiki didn't explain and told them to apologize to Pei Hua or else she would leave immediately. The security guards knew Xia Kiki was the chairman's wife and were about to speak up, but seeing Xia Kiki's expression, they dared not say a word. Xia Kiki believed the security guards knew who was right and wrong and told the wealthy women to apologize immediately. Pei Hua didn't want to make a scene and tried to pull Xia Kiki away. The wealthy women immediately turned on her and poured a bottle of wine on Pei Hua's face. Xia Kiki didn't back down, turned around, and sprayed a bottle of champagne. The wealthy women quickly dodged, but one of them, who had been splashed with wine, couldn't avoid it and fell into the pool. Seeing someone in the water, the waitstaff rushed over to rescue her. Xia Kiki looks up and sees Li Duohai. She knows that he has misunderstood her, so she quickly chases after him. Xia Kiki explains that she fought back because the rich ladies were bullying her. Li Duohai sees Xia Kiki's hot pot covered clothes and is furious. Xia Kiki wants to go change her clothes and make a grand entrance, but Li Duohai said it was too late. And fortunately, they had only been married for 3 months. After Li Duohai left, Tan Lin rushed over. Seeing Xia Kiki's sad expression, he was about to comfort her. Li Duohai went to the bar to drink, and Shui Yin came over. She had also seen Xia Kiki hitting someone earlier. She had been waiting for him at home and wished him a happy birthday. Shui Yin had already opened her jewelry store. Now she was a little rich woman and wouldn't marry Li Duohai just for his money like before. Xia Kiki changed her clothes but couldn't find Li Duohai. She called Li Duohai, and Shui Yin saw it and hung up immediately. Xia Kiki had a premonition that Li Duohai was with Shui Yin. Shui Yin saw Li Duohai unconscious and smiled triumphantly. Xia Kiki prepared a birthday cake for Li Duohai. She sat on the sofa all night until morning before seeing Li Duohai. Xia Kiki confronted Li Duohai about why he didn't come home last night and whether he was with Shui Yin. Li Duohai didn't deny it. After all, they had only been married for 3 months. Li Duohai began counting down the days until he would be free of Xia Kiki. Hearing Li Duohai talk so badly about her, Xiaoqi decided she didn't need to wait another 3 months. She would divorce him right now. Xiaoqi angrily returned to Pei Hua's place. Pei Hua advised her to hurry back and not let money come between them, no matter how much she hated him. But the stubborn Xiaoqi believed that since Li Duohai didn't love her, she wouldn't ask for money either. After Xiaoqi left, Li Duohai actually played the piano freely. He didn't understand Xiaoqi's true feelings. Mohan looked at the chairman and suddenly felt that he had changed a lot. But Li Duohai didn't pay attention to him, thinking he needed to return to his old self. Just as he was feeling smug, someone posted photos of him and Shuayin. Li Duohai was embroiled in a scandal with his ex-girlfriend and had to ask Xiaoqi to come forward to clear his name. Xiaoqi was already furious, and hearing that reporters had photographed Li Duohai with Shuayin made her even angrier. She firmly refused to go home with Li Duohai and didn't care about the money. Li Duohai was confused. He had always thought Xiaoqi was a gold digger. He never expected Xiaoqi to regard money as worthless. As soon as Li Duohai returned to the company, he received a divorce agreement sent by Xiaoqi. Mohan told him not to look at it, as Xiaoqi had already stated she wouldn't take a single penny. He realized Xiaoqi wasn't like Li Duohai had described her. He advised Li Duohai to reconsider, saying that Xiaoqi was probably not a gold digger. But Li Duohai didn't think Xiaoqi would love him. Xiaoqi decided to leave with nothing. Her best friend, Pei Hua, felt sorry for her. She advised Xiaoqi to think carefully before divorcing Li Duohai, saying that she would definitely lose out. Li Duohai sees that the birthday present Xiaoqi gave him is broken. He spends half a day trying to fix it, but can't. Just like his marriage with Xiaoqi, it has come to an end. The next day, Li Duohai brings buns to Xiaoqi to pay his respects. He says that nothing happened with Shuayin that day. He vows to take it as a lesson and never drink again. Xiaoqi thinks he is insincere and refuses to forgive him. Shortly after Li Duohai left, his mother came looking for him. She heard that her son had been caught cheating by reporters and wanted Xiaoqi to explain herself. Li Duohai's mother loved Xiaoqi as a daughter-in-law and was very unhappy about her son's scandal. But Xiaoqi had always protected Li Duohai, which made her even more heartbroken. In order not to worry her mother-in-law, Xiaoqi returned to Li Duohai. She demanded that Shuayin apologize, which left Li Duohai speechless. Fortunately, Xiaoqi was just joking, and the so-called scandal was a complete misunderstanding. Xiaoqi helped clear up the rumors with a compelling statement at the press conference, which deeply moved Li Duohai. The director of the Love at First Sight program also attended the press conference and asked Xiaoqi and Li Duohai about their current lives. Xiaoqi believes that love at first sight is just a beautiful wish. She believes that life is just a series of moments passing by. She is willing to spend every day with her husband. Mohan praised Xiaoqi's speech, saying that Li Duohai should cherish such a good woman. After the press conference, Li Duohai's attitude towards Xiaoqi changed noticeably, but he was also torn inside and suddenly asked Xiaoqi what they would do in 3 months. Xiaoqi retorted, "Are you now realizing how much you can't bear to part with me?" Hearing Xiaoqi's intention to continue, Li Duohai quickly refused, insisting that they must divorce after 3 months. Xiaoqi didn't back down either, vowing to leave immediately once the 3 months were up. Even if Li Duohai were to kneel and beg her, she wouldn't soften her heart. But she changed the subject, saying that even though they would divorce at midnight on the 3rd month, they should still make the most of the time they had left. Even if there were only 3 hours left, she would live them to the fullest. That night, both of them had something on their minds. After some time together, Xiaoqi realized that she had fallen in love with Li Duohai, but Li Duohai still thought she was a gold digger, which she couldn't let go of. Li Duohai also questioned himself and wondered if he had really misunderstood Xiaoqi. Through this divorce turmoil, Xiaoqi didn't want a penny. Xiaoqi is not like Shuayin said. She is not after his money. On this day, Li Duohai brought his contract wife to a charity gala. As soon as Xiaoqi opened her mouth, everyone was stunned. She immediately said that she would donate 100 pianos. Li Duohai did not expect Xiaoqi to make such a decision on her own. As the first donor of the night, Xiaoqi was invited to the stage to speak. Xiaoqi was very clever and quickly invited her husband, the chairman, to come on stage. At this moment, Li Duohai felt as if he was being held hostage by Xiaoqi. He forced a smile and walked onto the stage. Xiaoqi said that this was her husband's wish. Everyone responded to Xiaoqi's speech with enthusiastic applause. At this moment, The host invited the chairman to speak. Lee Duohai was not prepared and said that Xia Kiki had already said everything he wanted to say. Seeing Lee Duohai hesitating, Xia Kiki snatched the microphone and told everyone that Lee Duohai was a good pianist. He wanted to express his care for the children in the mountains through his piano playing. Lee Duohai playing the piano was just a hobby, but hearing the enthusiastic applause from the audience, he could only force a smile and go along with it. On the way home, Xia Kiki burst out laughing. Her little trick had really gotten Lee Duohai into trouble. Lee Duohai kept a long face the entire way home and didn't say a word. Upon returning home, Lee Duohai berated Xia Kiki. He accused her of overstepping her bounds by raising the company's lunch expenses to buy breakfast for the employees, and said he wouldn't hold her accountable for that. Now she was getting more and more arrogant, asking him what qualifications she had to question the chairman's decisions. Xia Kiki responded that as the first lady of the Shan Group, she had no qualifications, so who else did? Xia Kiki told Lee Duohai not to be angry, that donating a little bit of money was nothing. Bill Gates' wife donates hundreds of millions of dollars to Africa. Anyway, she wanted to learn from Bill Gates' wife. Lee Duohai immediately became anxious upon hearing this. Bill Gates is the richest man in the world. Xia Kiki saw that Lee Duohai was angry and wanted to take back her 10 million yuan. Unexpectedly, Lee Duohai said that the time had not yet come and she couldn't withdraw it early. In order to support herself, Xia Kiki decided to earn money herself to raise donations. Xia Kiki set up a street stall and sold all the luxury items she had bought. Mo Han learned of this and tried to persuade Lee Duohai to allocate a sum of money from the fund to donate the 100 pianos first. Unexpectedly, Lee Duohai refused, wanting to put Xia Kiki's arrogance in its place. Tan Lin was on his way to see a movie with Pei Hua when he saw Xia Kiki's street stall and became agitated. He thought that Lee Duohai was bullying Xia Kiki. Xia Kiki was too busy to help herself, so she asked Tan Lin to help her sell clothes. When he returned from the movie theater, Tan Lin wondered if Xia Kiki had suddenly gone to set up a street stall because things weren't going well with Lee Duohai. Pei Hua, who had been secretly in love with Tan Lin, told him not to meddle in other people's business. Little did they know that Tan Lin was like a blind man, constantly thinking about Xia Kiki, leaving Pei Hua at a loss for words. Mo Han received a message that Pete had suddenly started negotiations with two companies. They were choosing between their future group and another group. This competition was very important to them. Mo Han was furious but powerless to do anything. He wants Xia Kiki to try diplomacy too. Lee Duohai thinks Xia Kiki would scare people if she went out to do diplomacy. He doesn't think much of Xia Kiki's social skills. He thinks she's just a loud, silly girl who doesn't know anything about diplomacy. Meanwhile, Pete's wife Anna happens to run into Xia Kiki. Anna is surprised to see her selling things at a street stall. When she heard that Xia Kiki was selling things to raise money, she was very moved. At that moment, a couple was ready to buy shoes. After haggling over the price, the girl casually mentioned that she would have to eat instant noodles this month. Xia Kiki took pity on her and gave her the shoes. Anna took note of her kindness. After returning home, Anna told her husband what she thought. She believed that while her husband was hesitating between Lee Duohai and another company, because Xia Kiki was so kind-hearted, the future chairman of the company would be very good. Pete told Lee Duohai that the main reason he was so certain about Future Group was because of his wife, Xia Kiki. Lee Duohai had no idea what Xia Kiki had done. On his way home, he specially bought a bouquet of roses. He had no idea that Xia Kiki was currently watching a fashion show with Tan Lin. When he returned home and didn't see Xia Kiki, he hurried to the fashion show. Lee Duohai saw Tan Lin about to go on stage for the curtain call and quickly walked over. Xia Kiki saw Lee Duohai holding flowers and didn't know what was going on. She hurriedly explained that today was Tan Lin's fashion show. Lee Duohai saw the theme Summer Kiss and was furious. Tan Lin held a fashion show and deliberately included Xia Kiki's surname. This kiss was clearly meant for Xia Kiki. Xia Kiki thought that Lee Duohai was overthinking it. The title was just a metaphor and wasn't as serious as he was making it out to be. She could smell the jealousy in the air. At that moment, Tan Lin took the stage to give his speech. He said that today's designs were all inspired by Xia Kiki. He thanked Xia Kiki for always supporting and helping him. He said that Xia Kiki was his muse. Lee Duohai's mouth was twisted into a sneer. Xia Kiki knew that Lee Duohai was angry at this point. If she went up on stage to speak, he would be unhappy. But Tan Lin was very persistent and insisted that Xia Kiki go up on stage to explain the meaning of the theme. Xia Kiki looked at Lee Duohai, hesitated for a moment, and then agreed to Tan Lin's request. Xia Kiki believed that her creative inspiration came from her husband, Lee Do-oh-hai. His sincerity and enthusiasm made her realize the intensity of her love. Today, her husband Lee Do-oh-hai is also here. Let's give a warm round of applause to Lee Do-oh-hai. Lee Do-oh-hai carried the prepared flowers and strode onto the stage. Xia Kiki immediately gave him a kiss. Lee Do-oh-hai saw Xia Kiki's triumphant look and didn't show any weakness. He held Xia Kiki's head and truly interpreted a summer kiss. The sincerity of the two moved everyone to applaud and wish them a sweet love. Back home, they opened champagne to celebrate. Xia Kiki believed that Lee Do-oh-hai was right to find her, as he had made his business a huge success. As soon as she said that, she immediately felt that it was impossible. She and Lee Do-oh-hai had only been married for 3 months, so she told Lee Do-oh-hai to treat her well, lest people later talk about how good her ex-husband was, and she couldn't remember any of it. After going to bed, neither of them could sleep, thinking about the 3 months that were about to pass. They were about to part ways, and both felt a bit reluctant to let go of each other. Anna was returning to France, and Xia Kiki, to thank her for facilitating the cooperation between the two companies, specially sent her a custom-made outfit. Xia Kiki's gesture deeply moved Anna. On the way to the mountain school to deliver the piano, the driver expressed his gratitude to Xia Kiki for helping him find a job for his wife. He told Xia Kiki that everyone in the company admired her very much, unlike Shui Yin, who never treated them as human beings. The car quickly arrived at the rural school. Xia Kiki broadcasted live the scene of the donation in the mountain area. Seeing that the mountain school was very old and many places were leaking, Lee Do-oh-hai immediately said that the piano was not the most important thing. He asked Xia Kiki to ask how much it would cost to build a school. Lee Do-oh-hai immediately stated that the piano wasn't the most important thing, but rather the school's facilities were too outdated and dilapidated. He asked Xia Kiki to find out how much it would cost to build a school and how many schools like this existed in the mountainous area. Upon learning that it would cost 1 million yuan to build one school and that 14 schools needed to be rebuilt, Lee Do-oh-hai readily agreed to donate the funds for constructing these schools to the local education bureau. Xia Kiki was deeply moved by Lee Do-oh-hai's kindness and gave him a thumbs up. Just then, a student ran over and said her mother was in critical condition. The child's mother had a heart condition, but the family was too poor to afford the surgery. After learning the situation, Xia Kiki immediately arranged for the patient to be taken to the hospital. Thanks to their timely intervention, the child's mother was out of danger. To ensure the aunt received proper treatment, Xia Kiki also covered all the subsequent medical expenses. Lee Do-oh-hai is the supervisor of Shui Yin's jewelry store. Shui Yin demanded that Lee Do-oh-hai go to the site to oversee the work. She even threatened him, saying that if he couldn't handle it, they wouldn't even be friends anymore. Lee Do-oh-hai couldn't refuse and agreed to go in the afternoon. However, Xia Kiki soon found out about their matter. Shui Yin insisted that Lee Do-oh-hai stay overnight at her place that day. Lee Do-oh-hai explained that he was a married man and couldn't stay out overnight. Shui Yin immediately threatened to go to his house. Lee Do-oh-hai, fearing she would cause trouble, had no choice but to comply and go for a spa treatment. Unexpectedly, Xia Kiki suddenly burst in. Upon seeing Shui Yin, Xia Kiki deliberately asked what was going on between the two. Lee Do-oh-hai quickly explained that he was helping Shui Yin with a meeting and had come for a spa treatment to relax. Xia Kiki sees that Shui Yin is enjoying the massage and asks Lee Do-oh-hai to arrange a masseuse for her as well. Shui Yin is angry that Xia Kiki ruined her plans and wants to fight Xia Kiki. After the spa, Xia Kiki thinks that it's great that her husband has a part-time job at Shui Yin's company. Although he doesn't earn much, it's enough for her to buy a few handbags. Shui Yin wanted to have dinner with everyone. Lee Do-oh-hai immediately objected, insisting on having dinner alone with Xia Kiki. To everyone's surprise, Xia Kiki was very generous and willing to dine with her husband's ex-girlfriend. During dinner, Shui Yin, concerned about Lee Do-oh-hai's high cholesterol, kept serving him vegetables. Xia Kiki, noticing this, deliberately served her husband meat and discouraged Shui Yin from doing the same. Lee Do-oh-hai couldn't eat anything and hesitated for a long time with a pair of chopsticks in the air. Shui Yin wanted to eat shrimp and asked Lee Do-oh-hai to peel it for her. Seeing that her husband was really going to peel the shrimp for Shui Yin, Xia Kiki immediately stopped him. Xia Kiki peeled the shrimp, dipped it in some spicy sauce, and fed it to her husband herself. Seeing Xia Kiki deliberately showing off their love, Shui Yin can only endure it. After all, she is the legal wife. Faced with the war between the two women, Lee Do-oh-hai exclaims that this is not a meal, but torture. After the meal, Xia Kiki starts to lash out at Li Duohai. She thinks that he is dating his ex-girlfriend behind her back and wants to rekindle their old relationship. Li Duohai hurriedly explained that he was just helping Shuiyin. It was no big deal. Shuiyin, who was living next door, heard Li Duohai shouting and couldn't stop Xia Kiki, making her even more furious. At this point, Xia Kiki insisted on giving Li Duohai a spa treatment. Li Duohai was being massaged so hard he was screaming in pain. Seeing that he wasn't apologizing, she bit him, causing him to scream for help. Shuiyin believed that Li Duohai and Xia Kiki were intentionally making noise to embarrass her. Angry, she stood up and left, only to bump into Xia Kiki. Xia Kiki saw Shuiyin's expression and almost laughed herself silly. She thought that Li Duohai had been shouting so nicely last night because he was worried that his arm had been bitten badly and needed some medicine. However, Li Duohai insisted on getting a rabies vaccine. Shuiyin didn't give up and called Lu Dong. She wanted Lu Dong to help her deal with Xia Kiki, but Lu Dong felt guilty. He thought Xia Kiki was a good woman and he had only helped her once because he was momentarily blinded by his feelings. Even if Shuiyin gave him the jewelry store, he wouldn't harm her. Seeing that Lu Dong refused to help her, Shuiyin asked Pei Hua to meet her again. Shuiyin knew that Pei Hua and Xia Kiki were good friends, so she asked her not to be hostile towards her. The main reason she wanted to meet today was to find someone to talk to. She deeply loved Li Duohai, but in the end, she lost to Xia Kiki. In order to win Pei Hua over, Shuiyin gave her a beauty card. Pei Hua, driven by greed, pretended to refuse but eventually accepted it. Li Duohai was about to go on a business trip to France, and Xia Kiki sorted out the items he needed to bring. He finally noticed Xia Kiki's virtues as a devoted wife and mother. Li Duohai originally wanted to invite Xia Kiki to join him on the trip to France. However, Xia Kiki politely declined his offer. She felt that although she couldn't have a baby in 3 months, she could still be a good wife and let Li Duohai work with peace of mind. She would stay at home and take good care of her mother. After Li Duohai left, Xia Kiki invited her mother-in-law's friend to a hot pot restaurant for dinner. During the meal, one of the ladies asked Xia Kiki to help her daughter-in-law find a job as an assistant hotel manager. She didn't know how she lost her job. She wanted Xia Kiki to ask Li Duohai if he could find her a job at his hotel. Xia Kiki thought it was a small matter that she could take care of herself. The elderly woman saw that Xia Kiki was beautiful and had a mind of her own, and thought that Li Duohai was blessed in his previous life. Li Duohai's mother was anxious to hold her grandson, but she never dreamed that her son and Xia Kiki were in a fake marriage. Li Duohai used his busy work schedule as an excuse to dash his mother's hopes. Upon hearing this, Xia Kiki quickly took over and told her mother-in-law not to worry. Li Duohai and I will listen to your arrangements. Li Duohai couldn't help but glance at Xia Kiki several times after hearing her words. After returning home, Xia Kiki tried to find out if Li Duohai knew about his mother-in-law's relationship with Lao Fan. Unexpectedly, Li Duohai strongly opposed them being together. He also told Xia Kiki not to get too close to his mother. That way, when they divorced, his mother wouldn't be so heartbroken. Back at the company, Li Duohai complained to Mo Hen that he had invited Xia Kiki to France, but she didn't go. She had moved back in with his mother. Did she have some ulterior motive? Mo Hen knew that Li Duohai's thoughts had changed a little, but he wasn't willing to admit it. He advised Li Duohai to take another look at Xia Kiki, who seemed less and less like the gold digger everyone said she was. Li Duohai's cousin came to his house to confront him and accuse him of insulting her boyfriend. In Li Duohai's eyes, everyone was after his money. He even broke up his cousin's relationship with her boyfriend. Xia Kiki persuaded Li Duohai to let go of his prejudice and help his cousin's boyfriend release an album. This would also ease the tension between the brother and sister. Unexpectedly, Li Duohai insisted on his opinion that his cousin's boyfriend was no good. With Xia Kiki's help, Young Fan entered the recording studio. His rich and sweet voice caught the music teacher's eye, and he wanted Young Fan to release an album right away. To thank Xia Kiki for her efforts, Li Duohai gave her a massage to help her relax. This scene seemed familiar to Li Duohai, reminding him of when Xia Kiki tormented him. But considering that Xia Kiki was a weak woman, Li Duohai couldn't bring himself to hurt her. Tan Lin called Xia Kiki, hoping she could check his design, because Tan Lin had helped her before. Xia Kiki agreed without hesitation, but she didn't expect to run into Pei Hua at the company entrance. Hearing that Xia Kiki was looking for Tan Lin, Pei Hua immediately showed her displeasure. Xia Kiki thought she was feeling unwell. Little did she know that Pei Hua was pursuing Tan Lin. Tan Lin couldn't find any inspiration. so he asked Xia Kiki to design a series with him. Seeing that Xia Kiki was hesitant, Tan Lin asked her to take a look at the fashion show first, hoping that she might find some inspiration. Xia Kiki was about to leave when Li Duohai heard that Tan Lin had invited Xia Kiki. He knew that Tan Lin had always liked Xia Kiki and asked him what he meant by still thinking about his wife. Xia Kiki explained that she and Tan Lin were just good friends. Tan Lin was furious when he saw Li Duohai, but for Xia Kiki's sake, he forced a smile and asked Li Duohai to sit down. Unexpectedly, Li Duohai deliberately sits next to Tan Lin, forcing Xia Kiki to sit on his right. At this moment, Pei Hua and Shui Yin also enter the venue. Seeing Tan Lin and Xia Kiki sitting together, Pei Hua freezes in her tracks. Shui Yin notices her unusual behavior and quietly lets her sit down first. After the show begins, Tan Lin takes the opportunity to chat with Xia Kiki about clothing design. Li Duohai squeezed in between them and kept interrupting their conversation. He also completely dismissed all of Tan Lin's favorite works. Xia Kiki was afraid of the awkwardness and quickly urged him to say less and look more. But Li Duohai didn't care. As a billionaire CEO, who could he possibly fear? Everyone had their own agenda at the press conference. After the press conference, Tan Lin and Pei Hua went to a bar to drink. Pei Hua thought that Xia Kiki had married a rich man and was still competing with herself for Tan Lin, so she pointed out that she was a gold digger and told her about her fake marriage to Li Duohai. The two agreed to divorce after 3 months and promised to give her 10 million yuan. Hearing that she could earn 10 million yuan in 3 months, Tan Lin not only did not look down on Xia Kiki, but also worried about her. When they were talking, Shui Yin happened to walk by. Pei Hua grew tense, worried that Shui Yin had overheard their conversation. Xia Kiki accused Li Duohai of shouting loudly at the press conference. Li Duohai told Xia Kiki and Tan Lin not to get too close. Unexpectedly, Xia Kiki still wanted to collaborate with Tan Lin. She had already agreed to be Tan Lin's horse ranch model. Li Duohai felt very uncomfortable when he saw Tan Lin fixing Xia Kiki's hair. After the photo shoot, Tan Lin wanted to invite Xia Kiki to ride horses. Li Duohai immediately mocked Tan Lin. Tan Lin claimed that he had studied at the Royal Equestrian Club in England for a period of time. Hearing that Tan Lin had studied at the Royal Club, Li Duohai said that he had only ridden horses on the grasslands. He wants to follow the grassland rules. If two guys like the same girl, they have to race on horseback. If you lose, you can't show your face to the girl again. Tan Lin can't wait for a chance to prove himself. Unexpectedly, Xia Kiki starts to worry about Li Duohai. Li Duohai is a domineering CEO. How could he take a hothead like Tan Lin seriously? The race begins. Tan Lin whips his horse and takes the lead. Li Duohai followed closely behind, refusing to give up. Xia Kiki cheered from the sidelines. As they entered the final lap, Li Duohai, a seasoned veteran, made a mistake and charged ahead. In the end, Li Duohai won the race. Xia Kiki was overjoyed, as if she had won the jackpot. However, when Li Duohai dismounted, something went wrong. He was sent to the hospital, where the doctor diagnosed him with a herniated disc. The doctor advised him to sit in a wheelchair for a few days because the intense exercise of horse riding had aggravated his condition. Xia Kiki applied medicine to Li Duohai's back and told him not to be so stubborn in the future. However, his jealousy was still very cute. Li Duohai told Xia Kiki not to be Tan Lin's model and to find something else to do for herself. Xia Kiki thought it made sense and felt that she should achieve something in her career. She wanted to use her talents to start a clothing design studio. That way, even after they divorced, they could still save face in front of each other. Lu Ji's daughter was disqualified from a violin competition, so he asked Xia Kiki for help. If she asked Li Duohai to have dinner with the music association leaders, they would put Lucy's name back on the list. Xia Kiki knew how much Lucy loved the violin. Canceling the competition was like taking her life. She agreed to Lu Ji's request. Xia Kiki went home and told Li Duohai about it. To her surprise, Li Duohai refused to help, saying the music association was corrupt. Just then, Lu Go called again to ask about the situation. Xia Kiki didn't want to disappoint him, so she promised to handle it. The next day, Li Duohai was practicing calligraphy when Xia Kiki insisted on pushing him outside to soak up the sun. In fact, Xia Kiki had already made arrangements with Lu Gu to book a banquet at the hotel and invite the leaders of the music association to attend. Li Duohai, who had difficulty walking, could only follow Xia Kiki's instructions. At the dinner table, Li Duohai looked as serious as a leader. But when the Secretary General of the Music Association tried to flatter him, he paid no attention. Seeing this, Xia Kiki quickly said, Li Duohai has an upset stomach these past 2 days and can't drink alcohol. Secretary Zhao wanted to invite Li Duohai to be a guest at the competition, but he was rejected by Li Duohai. He told them to understand that he came to eat and had no other intentions. As for whether Lucy could participate in the competition, he couldn't control that. Hearing Li Duohai's refusal, Secretary Zhao didn't mention Lucy's participation in the competition anymore. That evening, Xia Kiki, in a bad mood, dragged Li Duohai out for barbecue. She completely ignored his desire to go home. Xia Kiki told Li Duohai to think about it. Not everyone is willing to ask favors of others. Lu Gut had done her a favor and wanted Li Duohai to call the secretary. Seeing Li Duohai give in, Xia Kiki pushed him back into the house, but Li Duohai immediately changed his mind and denied everything. Seeing Li Duohai go back on his word, Xia Kiki angrily accused him of being untrustworthy. Unexpectedly, Li Duohai blamed it all on Xia Kiki for forcing him. Xia Kiki scolded him for not understanding human nature. Fan and I heard that his friend Li Duohai's resort was holding a property tender. He brought some tea to ask Li Duohai for help. However, his casual remark, "We're family now," left Li Duohai speechless. Li Duohai hurried home to ask for clarification. Upon learning that his mother and Fan Ni's father were in a relationship, he immediately opposed it. Li Duohai believed that Fan Ni's father had set his sights on his mother solely for her money. His mother, seeing her son's obsession with money, angrily drove him out of the house. Back home, Li Duohai scolded Xia Kiki, accusing her of meddling in his mother's love life. He also criticized her for interfering in his mother's relationship. Xia Kiki regretted ever liking Li Duohai. She thought that Li Duohai only cared about his own feelings, was insensitive, and thought he knew everything. Li Duohai fought back, and the two fought fiercely over his mother's marriage. The next day at work, Li Duohai instructed the resort manager to avoid Fan Ni's company when bidding for contracts. Fan Ni's father had hoped that his son would turn his life around, but he didn't expect that they would lose the bid. He told Li Duohai's mother that he wanted to sell the house to his son to pay off his debts. That day, Xia Kiki visited Fan Ni's home and asked the old man not to sell the house. Lao Fan confided in Xia Kiki, explaining that he had no choice but to sell the house due to his own difficulties. Just as Xia Kiki stepped out, she encountered people demanding money from Fan and I. Seeing that they intended to take Fan and I away, Xia Kiki claimed she was his sister and promised to repay the debt in full. After dismissing the debt collectors, Xia Kiki learned that Fan and I owned a property management company. Fan and I hoped to secure a position under Li Duohai. Unfortunately, Li Duohai refused to give him the opportunity. Xia Kiki approached manager Wang, who was in charge of the bidding process at the company, to try to secure an opportunity for Fan and I. Manager Wang believed that Fan Ni's company was still quite good. However, the chairman had already made it clear that Fan Ni's company would not be awarded the contract. Nevertheless, his wife had once been helped by Xia Kiki and was deeply grateful to her. Upon hearing Xia Kiki's proposal, he agreed to handle the matter. The bidding process is completed smoothly. When Li Duohai sees that Fan Ni's company has won the bid, he is very angry and demands that manager Wang break the contract. Manager Wang emphasizes that he is doing this for the company and for his wife. Li Duohai immediately gets angry and asks if Xia Kiki is behind this. Manager Wang admits that his wife did ask him, but this bid is not a favor. Fan Ni's company's success in the bidding will not only benefit the group, but also reflect their family culture and bring harmony to the family. Fan Ni's company successfully won the bid. Li Duohai's mother invited her son and Xia Kiki to celebrate together. She believed that Xia Kiki was emotionally intelligent and could serve as her son's mentor. This was the blessing the Li family had earned in their previous lives. Her son had found a good wife, and she had gained a loving daughter-in-law. How wonderful it was for the family to live in harmony. Upon returning home, Li Duohai noticed that Xia Kiki and his mother were growing increasingly close. So 3 months later, the divorce became more and more painful. Xia Kiki gave Li Duohai a reason for divorce, saying that she had betrayed him, but this was not good for Li Duohai. The chairman's wife had cheated on him, which was very embarrassing. Xia Kiki then said that she would say that she had fallen into the sea and died. Li Duohai reacted strongly when he heard Xia Kiki curse herself. He didn't know when Xia Kiki had come to have a certain place in his heart. Lu Ji's daughter and several other children participated in the finals. This was all thanks to Li Duohai's secret help, and Xia Kiki had no idea. Back home, Xia Kiki asked Li Duohai what he wanted to eat to thank him, saying she would make it for him. Her enthusiasm made Li Duohai a little scared. That day, Li Duohai drove his luxury car to pick up his father-in-law. Lao Xia thought that Li Duohai, who ran a dumpling shop, should have just called a taxi instead of showing off. If he scratched the paint on the car, how many dumplings would he have to make to compensate? He asked Li Duohai how business was at the dumpling shop. Lao Xia heard that business was particularly good and told Li Duohai not to brag. No matter how good business was at a dumpling shop, it was still just that. He asked Li Duohai to take him to eat buns. Unexpectedly, Li Duohai said that he had reserved a restaurant to welcome his father-in-law. When they arrived at the restaurant, Lao Xia hurriedly asked Li Duohai to leave. How many buns would they have to sell to pay for such a big restaurant? Li Duohai asked his father-in-law to sit down and told him that he had not only opened a bun shop, but also started another business. Lao Xia had never looked at his son-in-law with respect, thinking that he was just a pancake vendor at best. He had always told him not to be half-hearted in his work and to do things well. Lao Xia looked at the high-end and luxurious surroundings and thought that this was a good place. Unexpectedly, Li Duohai told his father-in-law that not only did they have a bun shop, but this restaurant was also his. Lao Xia thought Li Duohai was bragging. He thought Li Duohai wasn't very capable, but he didn't expect him to be dishonest. Unexpectedly, Li Duohai's next words shocked Lao Xia even more. This entire building belongs to our family. I am the owner here. Lao Xia came to the chairman's office and was stunned by the magnificent decoration. He finally realized that Li Duohai had intentionally lied to him during his previous visit. In a panic, Li Duohai suddenly shouted, "Dad!" This surprised Lao Xia even more. Li Duohai asked his father-in-law to take a sip of water before revealing the truth about his marriage to Xia Kiki. Upon hearing this, Lao Xia immediately spat the water he was drinking onto Li Duohai. While the two were eating, Xia Kiki called. Upon hearing that Li Duohai had brought her father to the villa, she rushed back immediately. Xia Kiki saw that the two had already drunk quite a bit and told her father to go to sleep. She asked Li Duohai what he meant by keeping their marriage a secret. Who told him to act on his own and bring her father over? Li Duohai, half drunk and half awake, insisted on keeping Xia Kiki and deliberately said he couldn't upset the elderly. He had just found out that the two were getting married and couldn't tell him that they were about to get divorced. Xia Kiki had no choice but to accompany the two grown men as they enjoyed themselves. Seeing their increasingly harmonious relationship, she felt exhausted and helpless. She was still looking for an opportunity to persuade her father to go back. Her father saw her reluctance and insisted on staying. Lao Xia even quit his job, which made Li Duohai very happy. Unfortunately, Xia Kiki still couldn't tell her father the truth. Li Duohai was fishing with his father-in-law when he heard that Xia Kiki had asked Tan Lin out to dinner. He immediately told his father-in-law about it. Lao Xia suddenly appeared in front of Tan Lin. He now thought that it was very good for his daughter to marry a rich man. He thought that Tan Lin was just a small designer and couldn't compare, so he immediately started to berate Tan Lin. Tan Lin was powerless to respond, and Xia Kiki couldn't stop her father. She can only watch Tan Lin being chased away in front of her. Her father doesn't know that his daughter wants to divorce Li Duohai. He still thinks that with all their money, there's no need for them to run a studio. How nice it would be to be a full-time housewife, taking care of her husband and children. Xia Kiki is helpless and can only say that her father doesn't understand the situation. Tan Lin and her are just work colleagues, not what he imagines. Lao Xia is watching TV at home when he suddenly receives a call from his girlfriend Lily. He heard that she was coming to see him, so he hurriedly took her to his son-in-law's hotel. Lily exclaimed that Lao Xia's son-in-law was a super rich man. Lao Xia actually believed her sweet words and took out his property deed to invest in her fund. Lily originally had her eyes on Li Duohai's money. Seeing that Lao Xia insisted on selling the house first, she agreed to marry him first. That way, she wouldn't have to worry about not getting Li Duohai's money. Lao Xia brought his girlfriend and son-in-law to meet each other. Lily even boasted that she would make $1 billion. Li Duohai had seen it all before. A mere $1 billion wasn't worth his attention. When he heard that the aunt wanted to use the conference room for a class, he told her to contact Mo Hen. Xia Kiki returned home and heard that her father was selling the house to Lily for her business. She panicked. She asked her father how long he had known Aunt Lily. They had only known each other for 3 months. And Xia Kiki believed her father was being foolish and refused to sign the property deed. Meanwhile, Lily began training Mo Hen, who, under Li Duohai's instructions, secretly attended the session. When he heard that the market return could reach 20% to 30%, Mo Hen suspected she was exaggerating. He reported to Li Duohai that Lily was definitely problematic. and the training session was actually brainwashing. He then suggested everyone pool their funds, but upon hearing that Lily was involved in illegal activities, everyone backed out. Lee Duo-hai ordered Mo Han to shut down the meeting room. Lily was kicked out of the meeting room. Seeing the money she was about to get slip away, she flew into a rage and went to confront Lao Xia. Lily tried to drive a wedge between Lao Xia and Lee Duo-hai, even threatening to jump off a building. Lao Xia, enraged, went straight to Lee Duo-hai to demand an explanation. No matter how Lee Duo-hai explained, he wouldn't listen. He was willing to pay for his girlfriend's business, not just one house, but 10 houses. He was willing to give. Seeing his father-in-law getting deeper into trouble, Lee Duo-hai hurried out to persuade him, but Lao Xia struck again, sending Lee Duo-hai into the pool. Xia Kiki, upon hearing that Lee Duo-hai had been beaten again, rushed home. She saw Lee Duo-hai sitting on a chair with a depressed look on his face and gloated, accusing him of meddling. If he had sent his father back earlier, there wouldn't have been so many problems. But Lee Duo-hai did not regret not sending Lao Xia back. He insisted on fulfilling his responsibilities as a husband within 3 months. The next day, Lee Duo-hai asks to see Lily. He mercilessly exposes her true colors. When Lee Duo-hai mentions that Lily's previous boyfriends were all cheated out of their money by her, Lily realizes that Lee Duo-hai knows everything about her and has no choice but to give in. Lee Duo-hai says that as long as Lily is willing to reform, he is willing to help her. After hearing Lee Duo-hai's words, Lily decides to leave. Lao Xia reluctantly saw them off, but just as they were leaving, Lily was taken away by the police for fraud and illegal fundraising. Lao Xia had no choice but to believe it. When he got home, he regretted his decision and wondered if he had become senile. Lee Duo-hai quickly comforted his father-in-law, making Lao Xia feel much better. Lao Xia took the initiative to apologize to Lee Duo-hai and told his daughter to live a good life with Lee Duo-hai. After this incident, Lao Xia decided that Lee Duo-hai was a man he could trust. He also planned to leave and wait until he had grandchildren before returning. Pei Hua asked Tan Lin to dinner, angry that he had forgotten about her. She suddenly regretted telling him the truth about Xia Kiki. Tan Lin insisted that as long as Xia Kiki was with him, there was no future for him and Pei Hua. The two parted on bad terms. Pei Hua found Shui Yin and told her about the agreement between Xia Kiki and Lee Duo-hai. Shui Yin was overjoyed upon hearing this, believing that heaven had finally intervened. She claimed she was Lee Duo-hai's true love and couldn't wait to meet him. Upon learning of Lee Duo-hai's divorce, Shui Yin tightly embraced him. She declared that Lee Duo-hai was the man destined for her. She also said that she knew about his marriage agreement with Xia Kiki. This time, she was like clutching at a straw, determined to give up her business, marry Lee Duo-hai, raise his children, be a virtuous woman, and give him 10 children. Unexpectedly, Lee Duo-hai calmed Shui Yin down and told her that he had fallen in love with Xia Kiki 3 months ago. However, Shui Yin still believed that Xia Kiki was a gold digger. Unexpectedly, Lee Duo-hai took the initiative to reveal the truth about her slander of Xia Kiki. He didn't want to hold Shui Yin responsible for this matter. Lee Duo-hai only wanted her blessing, but Shui Yin was not willing to give up like this. She never calmed down to consider her own mistakes. On this day, Lee Duo-hai was holding a press conference for the company's listing. Unexpectedly, Mo Han suddenly saw that Lee Duo-hai and Xia Kiki's fake marriage was on the front page. The reporters in the audience all wanted to ask questions. Mo Han quickly pulled Lee Duo-hai, who was unaware of the situation, and ran out. At that moment, Lee Duo-hai was not worried about his company. Instead, he was afraid that Xia Kiki would be attacked online. He wanted to clarify the truth in person, but it was the company's IPO, and Mo Han didn't want him to show his face. When Xia Kiki saw the news, she was also worried about Lee Duo-hai's comfort. Just as Mo Han was about to face the reporters, Xia Kiki suddenly appeared on the stage and took the initiative to explain. She said that only by sacrificing herself could she save Lee Duo-hai's company. She admitted that she was indeed a gold digger. Lee Duo-hai was a man who took marriage very seriously. The reason she had schemed to get close to him was to marry into a wealthy family and become a rich lady. When Lee Duo-hai found out, he felt that the marriage had lost its meaning, so he asked for a divorce. Xia Kiki, unwilling to accept this, demanded a compensation of 10 million yuan. Throughout the entire process, Lee Duo-hai had no fault whatsoever. All responsibility should be borne by me. Upon learning that Xia Kiki was taking full responsibility, Lee Duo-hai immediately headed toward the press conference to clarify the facts, only to be stopped by Mo Han. He claimed that Xia Kiki had saved the company's IPO, and if he went forward, It would only complicate matters further. At the same time, Pei Hua was furious and found Shui Yin to confront her. Shui Yin immediately admitted that she was the one who posted it online, and said that if she couldn't have the man, she would ruin him. Pei Hua looked at her and regretted what she had done. Xia Kiki acted as if nothing had happened and prepared dinner. Li Duohai returned home and looked at Xia Kiki with a heavy heart. He put his pride aside and asked Xia Kiki to forgive him for his suspicion. However, Xia Kiki no longer cared about any of that. She just wanted to have a good meal and break up. At that moment, Li Duohai hugged her and begged her not to divorce him. Xia Kiki insisted on leaving and didn't mention the agreement. That day, Li Duohai encountered a man who was trying to extort money from him while he was on his way to work. When he got out of the car to investigate, two men got out of the van in front of him and took him to an abandoned factory. Just as Li Duohai was confused, Uncle Zhao called Wu Min out. It turned out that Wu Min had bought an inkstone for 4,000 yuan. He then sold the inkstone to Li Duohai for a profit of 500,000 yuan. In fact, the inkstone was something Uncle Zhao had collected as scrap. Uncle Zhao had no idea it was an antique, so he sold it to Wu Min at a low price. However, the owner of the inkstone found Uncle Zhao and demanded its return. With no other option, Uncle Zhao took him to find Wu Min, but Wu Min refused to admit that he had bought the inkstone. So the owner of the inkstone hired a lawyer to sue Uncle Zhao. Uncle Zhao didn't want to get involved in a lawsuit, so he kidnapped Wu Min. After learning what had happened, Li Duohai was willing to return the inkstone to its owner. He even offered to take everyone home with him to get it, but the kidnappers demanded that his family bring it to them. Li Duohai picked up the phone, and the kidnappers threatened him not to call the police. Meanwhile, Xia Kiki was packing her luggage at home, preparing to leave, when she received Li Duohai's call. She didn't think much of it and left the house with the inkstone. Little did she know that another kidnapper had seen on his phone that Li Duohai was a billionaire chairman. The kidnapper immediately raised the ransom to 1 billion. Uncle Zhao stepped forward to stop them, but was roughly pushed aside by the kidnappers. Li Duohai tried to call Xia Kiki to arrange the ransom. Fearing complications, the kidnappers arranged for Lin Ji to go and bring Xia Kiki over. However, when Xia Kiki arrived at the destination, Lin Ji immediately recognized her. It turned out that when Xia Kiki went to the mountains to donate pianos, she took out 300,000 yuan to help Lin Ji's mother see a doctor. In the end, Lin Ji's conscience got the better of him and he chose to call the police. Li Duohai finally realized that it was Xia Kiki's kindness that saved his life. He held Xia Kiki's hand tightly and couldn't let go for a long time. Xia Kiki's kindness allowed Li Duohai to escape danger and find happiness. Li Duohai was reluctant to let her go and begged her to stay. He confessed his love for her more openly. At this moment, Xia Kiki smiled and said that she still loved Li Duohai. She had fallen in love with him before she knew he was rich, but now, being a rich wife was not the life she wanted. She wanted to take advantage of her youth and do what girls should do. Seeing Xia Kiki's determination, Li Duohai had no choice but to give her 10 million yuan in return. Unexpectedly, Xia Kiki returned his bank card and gave him a farewell hug. Then she left without looking back. Li Duohai returned home in a daze and sat silently on the sofa for a long time. That day, in his speech at the company's IPO, Li Duohai discarded the speech Mohan had carefully written for him and instead recounted his experience of being kidnapped. Through this incident, he realized that wealth cannot be monopolized by one person. If wealth cannot make our society more harmonious, if wealth cannot make every family more harmonious, if wealth cannot make our love sweeter, if wealth cannot bring more warmth between people, but instead brings more hatred, suspicion, and even makes us lose the ability to love, then what is the meaning of pursuing more wealth? Li Duohai's speech was met with unanimous approval from the shareholders. The next day, he called Mohan out to make an important decision. When Mohan saw his personal statement, he was puzzled. He marveled that he had donated all his assets and shares to charity, effectively giving everything away. In reality, Li Duohai had also come from a humble background. From a young age, he had been terrified of poverty and began entrepreneurship to make money. Once he earned 100,000, he aimed for 1 million, then 100 million. Now, including his shares, his net worth was at least several hundred billion. If money were his enemy, he had already conquered it. To put it bluntly, he had already tasted the flavor of wealth to his heart's content. Money now held only numerical significance for him, no practical value. He wanted to start a new life and donate this fortune. He hoped it could help more people. From then on, Li Duohai became the genuine owner of a dumpling shop. He ran his 20 square meter dumpling shop with dedication every day. In his free time, he read the newspaper to pass the hours. Finally, Lee Duo-hai brought out a basket of buns. Xiaokiki opened it and saw that it was the crystal buns she had given to Lee Duo-hai. The two looked at each other and smiled happily. Perhaps this is the most perfect ending. Let's end today's review with a classic line from Xiaokiki. Money is precious, but love is more valuable. If you are loyal and faithful, you can throw away all your money.